that okay in the back? All right, because I want to not be heard today, so. Hate to invite everybody and then, have you walk away saying, what the heck is he talking about? All right. Well, we're going to get started. People are still trickling in, but, some of these folks have a long way to travel home. Although they want to stay and drop some more money here in Del Norte County, I'd be more than happy for having them do so. I want to thank everybody who has traveled here, who has come to support the sheriffs here, and to listen to what is going on in Northern California and Southern Oregon as far as what's happening with rural America. And I really want to thank those that have traveled from all over this Northern California and Southern state. Talk more, louder. Okay. I can do this because I have control. Plus it's my machine. Okay, is that better? All right. So to come this way, I want to thank you for traveling up here and over here. And for some of you, I know it's a great break because it's about 106 over in the valley. So coming this way is actually a relief for you. You may want to just stay for a while until the heat breaks over there, and we'd be more than welcome to share our beautiful county with you. I am so proud to be the sheriff of this community, of this county. It has been a pleasure. I cannot tell you. I love this community. I love the people that live here. It is such a wonderful place to live. It's been a gift given to me, luckily by my parents who had the good graces to come up here when I was young and bring me along. And I call it home, and I've raised my children here, and I am blessed beyond belief to have this ability to live where I so choose. So thank you to all those who live here and call it home. I would like to invite Pastor Edwin Fleshman up, please. And I've asked him to do the flag salute and also the invocation. So if you can please stand. It is an honor for me to have him here today. Not only because he happens to be the father of one of my deputies who does an outstanding job for the Del Norte County Sheriff's Office, but also because he is a veteran and he is a man of God, and I want to thank him for both of those things. And here is a microphone, sir.
Before we do the flag salute, I would like to read the American Creed to you to kind of motivate you to listen up today. And these men share their opinions about how to stand up for America. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed. A democracy is a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortune. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies. Amen. As we pledge allegiance to the flag, all veterans, whether they are in uniform or covered, may use the right hand salute under the new laws. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Our Heavenly Father, as we gather together today, I pray, Lord, that personal opinions, personal ambitions be set aside, that only that which is good for the people might be uttered forth. That, Father, that this would be a meeting to express the rights and freedom which this country was established to be under. And Father, I pray that each one would have you in mind to be obedient to the principles that you set forth for us. We ask this in the name of thy precious Son, our Savior. Amen. Amen.
All right. Now, on your program, it says, Special Guest Attorney Fred Kelly Grant. Well, unfortunately, Fred is stuck in Washington, D.C., trying to defend the very thing that he was going to be talking about with you today. And so he has sent a message which he has asked that I read. Now, I must don my glasses, as Washington once said, I am sorry, but my eyes have grown weak in the service of my county. Message to Sheriffs meeting in Delaware County on July 14th, 2012. Many weeks ago, I gladly accepted Sheriff Dean Wilson's invitation to appear at today's event. I have deepest respect for Sheriff Wilson and his wife, Mary, both of whom work as hard as humanly possible to protect the God-given rights. Beyond price in dollars is their work in spreading the word about how local officials can step up the pace to regain the traditional American way of life that is eluding our children. I respect just as deeply the sheriffs appearing today, Mike Poindexter of Modoc, Dave Hencrat of Tehama, Mike Downey of Humboldt, Tom Allman of Mendocino, Jon Lopey of Siskiyou, and of course Gil Gilbertson of Oregon's Josephine County. They have taken a giant step forward to defend the rights of citizens. They have used the coordination authority granted them by federal and state laws to take a meaningful role in preventing usurpation of property rights by bureaucratic government agencies. They recognize and put into practice traditional constitutional authority of the office of sheriff, the primary law enforcement officer with the responsibility of providing for the peace of the community. They take a proactive role in working for the economic stability of their communities and the citizens within them. Without economic health, there is insufficient revenue base to support necessary public safety and health services. So they urge the recreation of the logging projects that support schools and other services necessary to care for the public health and safety. They take a proactive role in preventing the close down of the forest through travel management plans, knowing that public health and safety requires open travel. They take a proactive role in developing policies regarding the dams on the Klamath River because they know that the adverse impact on rural economy of destruction. These sheriffs have created a new ray of hope for citizens long oppressed by arbitrary agency actions. The agencies are required to respond and work with the sheriffs by federal and state laws. I back them fully and hope that this meeting is a great success and gaining strength and support for them. I pledge to them that I will help them in every way that I can. I am terribly upset that I had to break my commitment to Dean Wilson to attend this meeting. There is work that I am involved in to defend the coordination concept. At the moment to create new legislation in Congress dealing with the coordination and cooperating agency status. You all know the problems that cooperating agency status can get us into. Some of our well-meaning friends do not get it, and their efforts to legislation could afford the extreme environmentalists the opportunity to limit and extinguish the coordination mandate. The urgency of this issue prevents me from being there, but I am there in spirit, and I offer our most sincere apologies to Sheriff Wilson and you all. I have now retired from active daily coordination work. I have left in the capable hands of Trademark America and the daily work that can help move along the efforts to regaining a rightful power to local governments. I will still be helping the sheriffs in developing concepts and implementing them. And I will be looking for one big project that can cause DC to shake. Nominations are open for that project. I want to tell you that what I predict is going to happen in the next few months and into the new year after the November elections. We are in for an overwhelming onslaught of new and more severe regulations. Right now and until November, you can expect to see a concession after concession to extremist environmental groups and causes. The Secretary of the Interior withdrew lands from uranium mining exploration in northern Arizona. He did this as a concession to Bruce Babbitt and his environmental friends in the Grand Canyon Conservancy. As a long-promised blow to the uranium mining, the lands withdrawn contain a source of 40% of the domestic uranium we use to support the nuclear energy plants in this nation. This action will cause billions of dollars of economic losses to 8 counties in northern Arizona and southern Utah. This action was taken even though proof provided by the Secretary's own personnel showed that there is and never has been contamination of the water by the uranium mining. I am convinced that this has not been for the coordination efforts of Siskiyou County. The Secretary would have made the decision to move ahead with the destruction of the dams in the Klamath River. The Forest Service has engaged in closing down roads and trails and even the forests in the county. Only the action of the sheriffs and county officials through the coordination process have prevented complete shutdowns. The BLM and Forest Service has combined to begin planning for the protection of the sage grouse on the regional basis, to prevent particular counties from using their coordination authority to protect against the end and limitation of livestock grazing. The owl habitat plans for Northern California and Northwest will do away with the logging that is left. The Environmental Protection Agency and the Corps of Engineers is simply waiting for the appropriate time to release and enforce their clean water regulation that will implement the failed Clean Water Act restoration. The regulation will extend federal control to every body of water in the United States, including the dry desert potholes. And every piece of land that adjoins, is near, or is adjacent to this body of water. Do you get that? The federal government will control every parcel of land in the United States, subject to the Army Corps of Engineers permitting. The Environmental Protection Agency is waiting to release this dust control regulation that will make it impossible for every dry land farmer in the nation to continue its operation. Agricultural experts tell us that there is no possible way to comply with this regulation throughout the great Middle, Western, and High Plains farming states. The EPA is waiting to release this boiler control regulation that will make it impossible for any steam boiler manufacturer to warrant that his product will meet the regulation. The regulation will kill the manufacturing and production companies that are left. The regulation is slated to release earlier, but President Obama ordered it retracted for the time being. Don't you imagine the day after November, results will finally end, the time being, and the regulation will be issued. Down through the lines we go, and each regulation agency can do harm rural economies. No, not harm them, destroy them. If President Obama wins the election, the regulations can roll out free, and the worry by the administration of political fallout. If he loses, the regulations will roll out quickly over the next 2 months before the new administration takes office. I believe that 2 months between November and mid-January may be the most critical 2 months in our history. Personal liberty and private property rights are in dire jeopardy. Congress can't stop it, even if they have the will to do so. Congress is broken. The gridlock is pathetic, and some congressmen have even suggested that the founders intended for gridlock to occur. How ridiculous it is to believe that brave Americans risk their lives for freedom of gridlock. I still maintain that every person elected to Congress should have to pass a test showing that they understood every provision of the Constitution and that the history of the Constitutional Convention that led to the final document. I believe that the test were given today that you would see a massive exit from the Capitol. Fortunately for you folks, you have the prospect of a new congressman in Doug LaMalfa who does understand and gets it. And you have an incumbent Congressman, Tom McClintock, who stands firm with local officials in their efforts to intervene on property rights. The real problem in America today is that the massive overgrowth of bureaucracy, just as the overgrowth of forests is unhealthy, the overgrowth of bureaucratic regulation and restrictions renders liberty unhealthy. Our founders did not provide a government to be run by bureaucrats. I have a t-shirt that says the current government is what our founding fathers tried to prevent. He says, when I wear it, I get favorable comments from no matter where I am. America is hungry for the relief of the bureaucracy. You have all heard the problems, and you have heard the sad news of the creeping nationalism that is what is the solution? You know what it is, and you have your local governments to stand up to the federal and state bureaucrats. Take their rightful place and develop policy and management of their natural resources, and make the 10th Amendment provisions live again. My 76 years and 50 years in the practice of law, working with and against the federal government, have convinced me that several premises There are no longer any hope for Congress will change course. No matter what party controls, Congress is broken. There is no longer any hope for the executive administration agencies will change course, no matter which party controls the White House. The change from the Clintons to the Bushes didn't help because bureaucrats protected the civil service entrenched in their livelihoods dependent upon their dominance. There is no control of any hope in the Supreme Court will change course, no matter whether it's a 4 to 5 edge in conservancy. Too much predestined has been set by the court and completely enforce the 10th Amendment authority. There is no longer any hope that state governments will change course, no matter who controls the state houses. They have become too dependent on federal money and entangled strings, and they have become too dominated by metropolitan urban areas. An example is being the redistricting program in California controlled by Southern California cities. But there is hope for local government level. There is hope as long as local sheriffs and supervisors in small towns and special districts and even non-governmental organizations supporting agriculture and natural resource economies will step forward and exercise their authority, granted them by the 10th Amendment and by the federal and state statutes which provide for coordination power. I urge all of you to follow the words of Sir Winston Churchill when Englanders in the darkest hour in the Blitzkrieg of 1941. Never give in, never give in. Never, 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 in nothing great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Support your sheriffs and supervisors and all local officials who are willing to follow these words, who are willing to stand tall against overwhelming force and a huge federal state regulatory onslaught. The only way that we can lose our God-given constitutional reinforced rights is by giving in, by giving up. The sheriffs who are here today have not given in, and they have no intention of giving in or stand up. They stand up for them, support them. Your children and your grandchildren depend on you to preserve for them the American way of life that you knew as children. Don't let them down. Say to the bureaucrats again what President Kennedy just said 3 years prior to his assassination. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of the first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike, that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by the hard and bitter peace, proud of its ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness and permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. As we move forward with the sheriffs through the Tea Party organizations, your Central Committee activities, your service clubs, your schools, church organizations, and as individuals, keep in mind the admonition to all of us by John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Do this for your country. Step up as Americans with your sheriffs and say to the bureaucratic powers, we will not be intimidated. We will take back this America that we knew and loved. God bless you. God bless the proactive sheriffs, and God bless America. Okay, I got through that one. That reading. I want to thank the sheriffs that are here with me today. You know, we have, this is our fifth. Okay, this is our fifth one of these that we have put on. And I have had the pleasure of going to the other 5 such Supporting Rural America events throughout Northern California. And it has been a pleasure and an honor to stand with these gentlemen that are here up here today and others who are not here because of commitments elsewhere. There is over about a dozen of us within our northern sheriffs and sheriffs counties that have stood up and are taking this very seriously and have committed to not only the Constitution but to the issues that rural America is facing. And I want to thank Mike Downey from Humboldt County, Dave Hencraft from Tehama County for being here. This is Jon Lopey from Siskiyou County, Mike Poindexter, Modoc County. So we got all the northern section covered here. And Tom Allman from Mendocino County. So we got the coast. We got the coast and the border all covered up here. And I want to thank them all for coming. When I first invited Fred, I wanted for him to come up here and talk about not only coordination with the sheriffs. And so I'm going to fill in just a tiny bit more for Fred. And that we will, from time to time, be talking about this word, coordination. And my wife, oftentimes, Mary back there, yay! Mary always gets on at me after these events and says, why didn't you tell them what coordination was? Because you'd say it, but a lot of people probably don't know what the heck it is. So what I want to read to you is something that was in a letter that Fred Kelly Grant has just drafted. It was in response to an attack that Sheriff Lopey had just undergone from a supposed writer at the Huffington Post. Yeah, you're nothing until you get attacked by the Huffington Post, I guess. But they threw Ohio in there just for I guess search engine hits, I guess, and then spent the rest of the time attacking John. But in that letter, he goes on to explain exactly really what coordination is. He says Congress has recognized the importance of the sheriff's duties and has directed federal agencies to coordinate with them. Congress defines the term coordinate with the Federal Land Policy in the Management Act 43 U.S.C. 1712 by directing the Secretary of the Interior to coordinate with local elected officials, to which sheriffs are one of those, to resolve inconsistencies between federal and county operations. The National Forest Management Act requires coordination by Forest Service with the sheriff. The National Environmental Policy Act requires the same, as does NEPA, the planning and studying. The legislative history of FLPMA, which is the Federal Lands Protection Management Act, shows clearly that Congress recognized the adverse impact on the county's revenue base and would result from a monstrous number of federally non-taxed acres in western counties, and from the management actions of federal agencies that manage those federal areas. Congress thus mandated that federal agencies work personally closely with local officials to ensure consistency in policy and management. In other words, if there is a discrepancy, a problem between what the county wants to do with its land and what it has within its county boundaries, and what the federal government wants to do in managing those lands, that those inconsistencies have to be worked out cooperatively, that we have to get together and solve and resolve those problems. That if we want timber management and we want to still harvest timber in the county, that is a conflict if they don't want to do it. And that conflict has to be resolved. That you have to come to some term, an agreement, within coordination. Because there is a specific interest within the county that revenues maintain, good, healthy economy maintains. And that kind of effort is done through coordination. Now the problem is they don't want to do that. So moreover, agencies themselves understand the burden placed on them by Congress. The Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, Environmental Protection Agency, Fish and Wildlife Service, Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Federal Emergency Regulatory Commission, the Corps of Engineers, and the Highway Administration, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Justice have all issued regulations and planning rules set forth on how they must coordinate with sheriffs throughout the nation. So they're all directed by their own offices to do this. They just don't want to do it. President Clinton, Bush, and Obama have all issued executive orders directing all federal agencies to coordinate with local officials in the spirit of federalism that is required in the United States Constitution, particularly under the 10th Amendment. That's what coordination is. Now, we have sought many times, and I am so pleased to know that our county, is there any of our county board members here today? Because I know a couple of them wanted to come, but they may not have been. But those on our county board have been very, very supportive of coordination, have taken the effort to strike towards coordination. Bodoc County has strong coordination efforts and have done so for many, many years. Those efforts have borne fruit for these counties, and they'll bear fruit for us as we go forward trying to fight these things that they call the travel management plan, the land management plan, and some of the other plans they put into place. as we try to come to an agreement between our community's heritage, its economy, its culture, its recreational usage. Those are all considerations that they must consider when they affect their coordination plans, whatever plans they put into place. And so that is what coordination is. Now, where the sheriff becomes so important is, most of the time when you talk about coordination, you're talking about boards of supervisors or other committees, commissions, water commissions, land management commissions. Any elected committee has to or can be a product of coordination. Now, because of the fact that the sheriff is an elected official all unto himself, he fulfills all the requirements to have to be coordinated with. And because our issue is public safety, which has always been and shall always be the paramount consideration for government, it's a pretty good trump card to bring these people to the table. And that's why the sheriff is so important in the process of coordination. Now, the other sheriff that was supposed to be here, that was here last night and visited with me for some time, was Sheriff Gil Gerbertson from Josephine County. Now, I wanted him to be here particularly because what's occurring in Oregon and what is occurring there because of drastic reductions in their revenues is what many, many communities are facing. If you haven't been paying attention to the news, we have cities right now that are going bankrupt throughout the state of California. Now, two of them legitimately. One just because they got sued into bankruptcy. But two of them just failed. San Bernardino, one of the largest cities in our community, in our state, and Stockton. Long-standing cities that have a long, healthy record for many, many years, but they've gone broke because of downturns in the economy. What Gil Gilbertson is facing is something that many rural communities will be facing, and I'm afraid that California will be facing soon. And that is, they have lost their economy. The Williamson Act was enacted in order for timber tax dollars to be infused into counties that used to have timber harvests. Now, those dollars were designed to go away, and through legislation they kept going on and going on and going on, but finally this last year they went away. No more Williamson Act dollars coming into these counties. Now, Josephine County, they tried to pass an initiative to assess a few more taxes onto everybody, and it got voted down. They don't like taxes up there. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you know, I have been watching Delaware, Curry County for years, and it's the same thing. You cannot pass a tax up there to save your life. Oregon is death on taxes. They do not want to see none of those taxes. But as a result, what happens is, because county governments, all of us, we live on taxes. Services that are provided by county government all are fed through taxes. So what has happened in Josephine County, because they have no timber industry, they have no ability, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel that timber industry is going to come back. Those timber dollars are gone, and they're gone for good. And as a result, last year, in a department that used to be about 100 some odd individuals, was reduced to 35. A 70% reduction in their staff. Today, if you live in Josephine County, you have 5 deputies for the entire county. When you call for a deputy, you can get one between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. The jail, which has a capacity of about 220, and at its average was 160 occupants, is now 60, of which half of them, 30, are contract beds to the federal government. So that means only 30 individuals will be held in Josephine County Jail, which is a county of 85,000 people. So if you're committing crimes in Josephine County, or if you're committing crimes in my county, Josephine County is available. I hate to do that to you.
Great job.
But the bad part about it is that this is something that unfortunately is very true for all of us. As regulations come down, as attacks are made on the MLPA that will hinder and shut down our fishing industry, which is a critical support for Del Norte County. As they seek to shut down and regulate water along the rivers because of watershed protection and the coho salmon and Chinook salmon protection acts that they're trying to now turn the salmon into the new spotted owl for Del Norte County. They want to shut down watersheds for watershed protection, groundwater utilization. They want to regulate the waters. In many cases because they want to shut down agriculture and ranching along rivers. Well, that's the point of having agriculture along the river, is you need the water. And if there's one thing that Del Norte County has an abundance of so far, is water. We don't have a shortage here. Thank God. But the attacks still come. They want to regulate our water. They have asked the farmers and the ranchers along the Smith River to now take taking permits that they've never had to permit before. I tell them, do not permit. Do not do something that will therefore invite you to do something and be regulated by the federal government. Do not allow them to control your water. Water is life. Without water, life does not exist. If government controls water, they control where we can live and where we will be able to live. That is the ultimate goal.
Amen. Amen, brother.
You know, there is I usually read part of the Constitution, but I want to read this one. And many of you will probably not recognize it, but I'll read it to you anyway. It's the California Constitution. And when I read it, I couldn't believe it was California. It says, "We, the people of the state of California, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, in order to secure and perpetuate its blessings, do establish this Constitution." Does that sound like us? Man. Under Article 1, Section 1, all the people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. Among these are enjoying and defending life, liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. This is the California Constitution. Its desires are strong. Its purpose is strong.
Governor is weak.
But somehow we have lost the purpose and meaning behind those words. Freedom is something that once lost will not likely be gained again. We know this. History has shown it time and time again. One of the biggest problems that the sheriffs and I are all facing is the indebtedness of our state. The financial outlook of our state is poor and bleak. Many counties are suffering economically. And that economy impacts us directly because it inhibits our ability to provide what we so want to provide for our communities. Safety. To provide the services that are needed for public safety. That is why sometimes we get asked, as these sheriffs do from time to time, why the heck are you doing this? Why are you involving yourself in the harbor? Why are you involving yourself in these timber issues? Why are you involving yourself in these water issues? Because they are our economy. They are our community. They are our lives. They are our jobs. They are our families. Without them, we don't exist. Our communities don't exist. And we must stand and fight and defend our liberties and our freedoms and our communities. For our way of life here in Northern California is dependent upon that. Now I'm going to get off the stage here, and I'm going to turn it over one of the other sheriffs here. What is my clerk going to say? Jon Lopey. Oh, you're in for a treat. Okay. But before I go, this is a quote, and it's often quoted, and I'm sure most of you have heard it, but it is so true. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. For one day we will spend our sweet sunset years telling our children of our children's children what it was once like to be in the United States, where men were free. Teach our children. Teach your families. Teach them what it is to live in this country. Teach them about the Constitution. Teach them about our history. Teach them about the facts so that they know that free housing, free healthcare, free is not freedom. Freedom is only given to you by one thing, by God, by birth, and not by government nor king. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce Sheriff Jon Lopey, Siskiyou County.
I too have an eye problem. Anyway, thanks, Dean. And I wanted to thank all these great sheriffs because the men to my left and to my right are great backup, and they're men and great law enforcement administrators. I really admire them, I respect them, and I love you guys. And thanks for standing with me and our citizenry. And I also want to thank you, because really, you people out there, you're our inspiration, and you're really going to make things happen. So thank you very much. Anyway, I wrote a few things down. Now, Siskiyou County's got a lot of things going on. And I must admit that I could not encapsulate all the issues and problems that we're having in Siskiyou County, but I tried to make it brief. But we have so many things going on. I mean, we're literally under siege. But I'll try to paraphrase and make it brief for you so that you understand what's happening in our county. Anyway, good afternoon and thank you for giving me the privilege of being here to briefly discuss what is happening in Siskiyou County and describe our fight to preserve our heritage, our way of life, our economy, our public safety, health, and welfare of the citizens and the freedoms we hold dear. Let me briefly advise you what we sheriffs are not. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is because actually this is what people are saying. We are not anti-government. We are not extremists. I guess depending on your point of view anyway. We are not militia leaders. We are not advocates of extremist ideas, violence, or lawlessness. Isn't it interesting in our nation that when you stand for the Constitution and you actually revere God, that suddenly you're a weirdo and you're some kind of extremist? It's ridiculous. Unfortunately, this is how we sheriffs and many of you brave Americans are being portrayed in the media and on the internet. Last week, I was portrayed in an unfavorable light on the website, the Huffington Post. Now that might be a minus, but it's also a plus. We must be shaking somebody up back in Washington, D.C. And these great sheriffs are, I think, making a difference, and you people are making a difference just being here today. And I guess when we show up on websites like this, and we're thrown in there with people like Sheriff Joe Arpaio, maybe we're making progress. It is discouraging that there's those who are attempting to denigrate me and other courageous sheriffs. Why? I think because we're challenging the status quo. We are challenging some federal and state agencies and some special interest groups who are using money, influence, politics, regulations, and lies to literally destroy rural America and our way of life. Contrary to popular belief, I get along with most federal and state agencies working in my county. I welcome open dialogue and truth, but unfortunately, this is not usually what is directed towards sheriffs or many of the citizens we serve. Too many politicians have forgotten that they work for the people. And that's why these are great sheriffs, because they know they work for you. And you don't work for government. And that's been the principle on which our nation has been based and our Constitution from the very beginning. And in other words, we're servants of you. You don't serve us. And that's why this whole thing is kind of fouled up. Now, another great American, Abraham Lincoln, once said, now listen to these words of Abraham Lincoln. And it's just kind of deja vu. These things just keep coming up when we're not paying attention. Abraham Lincoln said, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. And I think we're doing that. The sheriffs on this stage this afternoon are brave protectors of the law who are striving to do the right thing. These sheriffs are striving to do what is right, to stand for the United States and state Constitution. And when these sheriffs stand for the Constitution, both state and the U.S., they're standing for you. As a sheriff, we are all sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and the California State Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I said in my last speech, and this was in the Huffington Post, unfortunately, recently there have been more domestic enemies than foreign. They'll probably show up again. Some federal and state agencies, now some, not all, but some federal and state agencies and bureaucratic, centrally developed policies and regulations threaten the public health, safety, and welfare of our citizens and are systematically destroying rural America. Don't be misled. There is a movement to destroy rural America as we know it.
Amen to that.
Our founding fathers got it right. They knew human nature and built safeguards into the Constitution and the Bill of Rights because they knew men would screw things up. Daniel Webster once said, "Hold on, my friends, to the Constitution, to the republic for which it stands. Miracles do not cluster, and what has happened once in 6,000 years may not happen again. Hold on to the Constitution, for if the American Constitution should fail, there will be anarchy not only here, but also throughout the world." Some of my words may be politically incorrect, and I will not apologize. Our founding fathers were Christian men, and they carefully crafted the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. They were inspired by divine providence. A famous German philosopher once said, "The hero draws inspiration from virtue of ancestors." This is time to cling to the ideals and truths which made us strong more than ever before. Since taking office, the citizens I serve have been literally under siege. Siskiyou County is the 5th largest county geographically in the state, with 6,187 square miles. 65% of our land is public land, mostly managed by the U.S. Forest Service. The timber industry is all but destroyed. A once thriving economic giant is now a shadow of its former self. During the early 1980s, Siskiyou County had 22 lumber mills. We now have 2 partially functioning mills. And you wonder why we're going broke. Thanks to overregulation the spotted owl, environmental extremism, bad science, our economy and traditions associated with logging are almost completely destroyed. Siskiyou County is also overwhelmed by attacks against mining, recreation, and farming and ranching are being threatened due to the over-application of various laws and regulations, such as the Endangered Species Act. For 3 to 4 decades, environmental extremism and dumb decisions have elevated the interests of trees, fish, birds, and frogs over the interests of hard-working citizens. We are destroying our environment in our efforts to protect it.
Amen to that.
The Department of Interior and many other federal and state agencies are attempting to remove 4 dams on the Upper Klamath River, which will deny clean energy to about 70,000 people and destroy the economy, recreation, and habitat for hundreds of species of wildlife of numerous kinds, in deference to coho and Chinook salmon. Thus far, concerns about 21 million cubic tons of sediment containing hazardous materials flowing down the Klamath River should these dams be removed, the diminished water for firefighting, the capacity to control flooding, and the destruction of recreation and concerns for other habitat have fallen on deaf ears. In other words, common sense has left the lexicon of modern political thought. Dr. Paul Hauser, a Bureau of Reclamation scientific advisor, recently criticized the scientific accuracy and integrity of the science used to justify the dam removal. And he asserted the studies were developed to support the Secretary's expressed desire to remove the dams, that's Secretary Salazar, at the expense of the Siskiyou County citizenry. For his integrity and his courage, he was fired for failing to be a team player. The environmental extremism and overregulation by some federal and state agencies have created one of the worst economies in California. Siskiyou County has some of the highest unemployment rates and highest alcohol, drug, child abuse, and domestic abuse rates in the state of California. And they ask why these sheriffs are concerned about the direction that we're heading. Once proud and prosperous communities are now breeding grounds for alcohol and drug abuse, marijuana cultivation, illicit drug trafficking, and virtually every other form of crime. Overregulation and foolish policies have been the catalyst which has helped to cause and accelerate abject poverty throughout Siskiyou County. Reduced tax revenues wrought by economic and moral declines have exponentially reduced all county services, including public safety. The economic disaster forced upon Siskiyou County through litigation, federal and state regulatory abuses, and the influence of special interest groups have eroded property rights and the freedom to earn a living. Self-sufficiency, pride, incentive, opportunity, and freedom have been replaced by dependence on the government, loss of hope, defeatism, lack of jobs, and diminished capacity to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Diminishing job opportunities, a declining tax base, exclusion from traditional occupations, and indifference by leaders who know better have resulted in many adverse outcomes, including a 30% decline in deputy and correctional deputy positions within my department within the last few years. And just like Dean said, you look at Josephine County losing 70% of their people on the Sheriff's Department. That is a forecast of what's to come to all of us if we don't wake up and take some kind of proactive action. This means fewer resources with which to prevent and to respond to a rising crime rate. AB 109, or realignment, which is delivering about 30,000 state prison inmates to all of the counties of California, is putting more criminals on the streets while fewer peace officers are available to counteract this threat to public safety. Adlai Stevenson once said, "America is much more than a geographical fact. It is a political and moral fact. The first community in which men set out in principle to institutionalize freedom, responsible government, and human equality." It is sad but true. Our freedoms, responsible government, and human equality are becoming an exception rather than the rule. Now an environmental activist organization is attempting to remove the Dwinelle Dam, which would essentially economically devastate the #1 tax-generating community in Siskiyou County, Lake Shastina. This same organization helped to destroy the timber industry. If you look at where the money's going in that, in the Klamath Dam deal, the removal of the 4 dams in the upper Klamath River, there's like $93 million that are going to special interest groups, most of them environmental, activist type organizations. At a time when we can't afford to put soldiers on the battlefield or police on the streets, and they want to give $93 million, not to public safety or to other essential public services, but to environmental activists and special interest groups. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Payback, John.
It is obvious that some policies promulgated in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. are being implemented to destroy our county, our remaining economic hope, and the few farming, ranching, mining, and recreational enterprises which still exist. We got nothing and they want to take it. There is a threat to classify thousands of acres of land in California and Oregon as monument land, pursuant to the Antiquities Act. This will close off the land to most uses such as grazing, timber harvesting, recreation, and mining. Here are some other startling developments from Siskiyou County. And again, if it happens in Siskiyou County or Josephine County, it can happen here or anywhere. The state has raised water master fees for Scott and Shasta Valley farmers and ranchers by 800%. And when they told us that, they looked at us with a straight face. The National Marine Fisheries Service is attempting to implement a so-called voluntary coho salmon restoration program in Siskiyou County. The North Coast Regional Water Control Board is attempting to implement a groundwater monitoring program, which would cost ranchers and farmers as much as $0.50 to several dollars an acre. Now, these 3 things actually happen in 1 week. So a lot happened in Siskiyou County. In the recent past, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency's Office of Law Enforcement, which actually have special agents with guns and badges, attempted to initiate a criminal investigation against a local rancher for an alleged fish kill of coho salmon fingerlings, which supposedly died in a creek that seasonally goes dry. And they initiated this investigation bypassing the county sheriff, me, the district attorney, and the local courts. This so-called investigation resulted from an environmental activist complaint. The special agent from NOAA's Office of Law Enforcement was oblivious, absolutely oblivious, to the anger generated by this incursion into Siskiyou County, and his agency attempted to subject a hard-working, prominent ranching family to federal court action in the Eastern District Court, which is 275 miles one way from the rancher's home, when a California Department of Fish and Game warden standing right next to that federal agent could handle the case and send it to the local court. Now, I would say that is probably at least a suspected abuse of federal police power, and they drove 155 miles from your coastal area over to Siskiyou County to provide that service to us. An agency primarily vested with enforcement of federal law for the National Marine Fisheries Service in coastal waters miraculously found it necessary to drive about 155 miles inland one way to investigate the alleged death of a handful of coho salmon fingerlings in a puddle on private property, a ranch owned and operated by the same family for 5 generations. Recently, we were able to install an attempt by NOAA's back, the Federal EPA, Corps of Engineers, and Regional Water Control Board effort to compel a rancher to get additional permits even after the Department of Fish and Game supported their premise that they were in compliance with the law. And in other words, they had an incidental take permit. Their heinous crime? They removed gravel from a dry creek bed, something the family has done, again, for 5 generations. The Fish and Game incidental take permit was ignored by the other state and federal agencies involved in this case. Why? Another environmental activist complaint, which resulted in another disproportionate response from several agencies, mainly based outside our county. The question to the Regional Water Control Board was asked, how many permits does it take for a hard-working ranching family to make a living in Siskiyou County? Or I guess you can ask elsewhere too. Recently, a United States Forest Service representative told the Happy Camp Coordination Committee, and I'm on that committee, that their attempt to attract a lumber mill to Happy Camp, by the way, in the old days they used to have 6, could be held up for 4 or 5 years due to environmental activists. The North Coast Regional Water Control Board and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's newly released Spotted Owl Restoration Plan. Now I once asked one of these experts, do you have a study, can you even prove that all this nonsense and all these millions of dollars you've spent to protect the spotted owl is even working? They can't even tell you if it's working or not. So they literally destroyed a county's economic infrastructure and backbone because they think they might be helping a bird. And I must say, I will bring it up again. My father-in-law is retired from the Forest Service, but 33 years in the Forest Service, and he told me once, you know, that doesn't make sense because God gave those birds a sense that if the tree's molested, they're probably going to fly to another tree. So anyway, again, you know, common sense is kind of waning. Anyway, currently, the U.S. Forest has failed to properly manage our forests and has implemented a transportation management plan which has left our county susceptible to catastrophic wildland fires and closed access to public lands owned by the people. Currently, experts in the local area estimate that the fuel buildup in our forest is at least 10 times what is traditionally acceptable in the forestry profession. And you see some of these developments that are happening in places like New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and some of these other states ravaged by catastrophic wildland fires. Well, it's going to happen here if we don't stop this nonsense. Dredge mining is another issue. Dredge mining is now prohibited in the lower Klamath River Basin. Pleas to allow mining, another Siskiyou County tradition, were ignored by legislators, and a moratorium was signed into law despite the poor economic forecasts and conditions in the impacted areas. About 3 weeks ago, this is just one of the newest things. About 3 weeks ago, I was advised by a young couple residing in the Mount Shasta area that they were visited by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Their crime? Someone filed a complaint that they were operating an illegal dairy. The young couple, along with some other families, own 3 cows. It is evidently illegal to give away or sell their milk. Although they weren't cited, a departmental supervisor advised them they would be subject to fines of $10,000 if they gave away or sold the milk. When asked how they could obtain a dairy permit, they were advised it would cost them a minimum of $250,000 to purchase enough equipment to comply with permit requirements. Evidently, it doesn't matter if you have 3 cows or 300. It all costs the same to comply with the regulations imposed by state regulators. Coordination laws, which require input and collaboration between federal, state, and local officials and citizens, and as Dean mentioned, required by federal and many state plans, are not being followed. That's another concern of the sheriffs. For decades, little or no consideration has been given to the property rights and the interests of people, the citizens we serve. And I've told some of these federal regulators, hey, you know what? I love the environment. I wouldn't live in Siskiyou County if I didn't love the trees and the birds and the fish and all this other stuff. But you know what? I love people more. Most citizens in Siskiyou County tell me their government acts like fish, birds, frogs, and trees are more important than people. The 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 8th, 10th, and 14th Amendments, at a minimum, are being ignored and or eroded by some federal and state agencies in their quest to control our water, land, and our natural resources.
That's their plan.
As Fred Kelly Grant and Dean mentioned, the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, or FLPMA, pursuant to 43 United States Code 1712, and other provisions such as the National Forest Management Act and the National Environmental Policy Act require coordination with local officials like the county sheriff, board of supervisors, and other officials and the people we serve. However, these coordination requirements are being subverted, ignored, and often bypassed by officials. And Dean mentioned some of these agencies. It applies to BLM, U.S. Forest Service, EPA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FEMA, the federal, the Corps of Engineers, the Highway Administration. We already mentioned the executive orders from Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama. California alone has 20 statutes requiring coordination. So, you know, I mean, that's why the sheriffs are concerned. The law's not being followed. And the constitutional rights of our citizens, especially property rights, and that, you know, I mean, the Constitution, you read things like life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You know, it's kind of bypassing us. The media, now I'm going to, this is another startling revelation, the media is generally against us and harbors support for environmental causes. That's a startling revelation, isn't it? You got to hold the media accountable. You got to get involved. History appears to be repeating itself. Thomas Jefferson once said, now this is the late 1700s. Now this is what he said. The man who reads nothing is better educated than the man who reads nothing but newspapers. You gotta love those founding fathers because they had their acts together. Many sheriffs are staying together to challenge inappropriate exercise of federal and state policies and powers and standing for the U.S. and state Constitution. Now, there's a lot you can do to help. Louis D. Brandeis once said, "Those who won our independence believe liberty to be the secret of happiness and courage to be the secret of liberty." It is time for us to be men and women of courage. Your sheriffs cannot do the job without you. We are a constitutional republic conceived of liberty of, for, and by the people. We need your help. George Washington once said, "How soon we forget history. Government is not reason. Government is not eloquence. It is force, and like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master." We must study the Constitution and get informed about the local issues which impact you and your future the most. Get involved and stay in the fight, and by all means, vote. I'm almost done. Support your local sheriff. Now, if any of these guys were running for sheriff against me in my county, I wouldn't even run. They're such great guys. But hold your local, state, and congressional leaders accountable and network with them as often as possible. I can tell you, I always call the state senator, the state assemblyman. We have Senator LaMoffa, and we have Assemblyman Nielsen, and Congressman Herger's leaving, and I think Doug LaMoffa has a great chance of getting in there. Hey, you know what? Badger them every day. I mean, you got to network them. They're good guys, and they'll help you out. And sometimes the squeaky wheel does get the grease. I can assure you of that. remember to read and study history and uphold the Constitution. Read and study the Declaration of Independence and Bill of Rights. Now, this is politically incorrect. I'm going to say it anyway. I'm proud of it. And as a matter of fact, we are a nation based on divine providence. And I'm going to tell you in a minute, you know, some of us served overseas and fought for this country.
Amen to that.
And I'm not ashamed to say, yeah, I'm a Christian and I uphold Christian principle. I attempt to anyway. I respect all other religions. I fought, I was in a hostile fire zone in Bosnia, and I was in Afghanistan and Iraq. I respect those religions and those people that we fought for. But I demand, and the Constitution also supports the premise that we can demand that our religion is respected too, and our religious rights. Not to mention the fact, I believe that is in the Constitution. It was so important the Founding Fathers put in the First Amendment, right? Now, this is pretty radical here. Pray for our nation, our leaders, and our communities. Without returning to our biblical and Christian roots, we, like a blade of grass, will falter by the winds of adversity and the hard times that are currently upon us. Norman Vincent Peale, Mr. Peale once said, "Courage is fear that has said its prayers." And I'm going to cite, this is really politically incorrect, I'm going to cite the Bible. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But the people who trust the Lord will become strong again. They will rise up as an eagle in the sky. They will run and not need rest. They will walk and not become tired." We are in the fight of our lifetime, and we are not only supporting and upholding the U.S. and state constitutions, but we are securing the future of our children and grandchildren. And we are standing for the rule of law and freedom. As an Army officer and Marine, I have served extended tours of duty in places like the Philippines, Haiti, Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Iraq. I have seen firsthand what happens to a nation, what happens to a people when the rule of law is subverted or constitutional protections are abridged or non-existent. I have seen firsthand the results of tyranny, terror, torture, death, hunger, despair, injustice, suffering, disorder, and doom. I want what the vast number of Americans want: justice, truth, honesty, and fairness from our own government. I want an America and a government which follows the Constitution and is what our Creator and Founding Fathers envisioned not so long ago. The great Democrat, now I'm going to quote a Democrat, but he was a great Democrat, Zell Miller. He was a former Marine and also, I think, a great statesman. He said, "Holding the course of freedom is hard. But with all I've learned from study, age, and experience, I believe with every fiber of my body that there comes a time when a civilization has to choose between good and evil, between freedom and tyranny. Ladies and gentlemen, we must now choose. We're at the crossroads of our own destiny. Faith, country, and values should not be a foreign concept. It should be the principles we live by every day of our lives. The America they will have and the freedoms they will enjoy will depend on us and its succeeding generations. We must fight. No one else will do the job. Ladies and gentlemen, our way of life is at stake, and so is our future. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Okay, seventh inning stretch now.
I want you to know we draw straws and nobody wants to follow Lopey.
I have had the pleasure. About a year and a half ago, I came to terms with a little unknown thing called the travel management plan up here, and it's a plan that the National Forest Service is putting into place in Delaware County, which calls for the decommissioning, tearing out, and closing down many of our roads in the back areas to allow limited access to our public lands. Since then, we have engaged in coordination talks, and they've been good and bad at various times. Right now, we're kind of at a bypass. But one of the efforts that have been taken on is by several of you here today, and I'd like you to stand up. Those of you that have been helping me in this 24/77 identification of our rural roads here in Delaware County, please stand up. Mike? Don? Don, come on. Well, a couple of you are shy, but I want to thank you, Jerry Henningsen back there. Thank you so much for coming. Those of you that have taken the time and the effort, and Don and others that have come in, and what they have done is there's a little known thing within the confines. It's called a federal law, RS 2477. And it's this little thing that says, if there has been a road, a trail, that has been in existence in your community and historically used since 1976, that the federal government has no authority to shut down. And just last week, San Bernardino County won a case, 9th District Court of Appeals, that said, yes, they're right. These RS 2477 roads cannot be shut down, and they have to keep these trails open in the Mojave Desert that they wanted to shut down. The federal government wanted to not allow access to, and they are now staying open. But the efforts of coordination and the people in the community that have taken their time and their efforts to come forward and to help me to identify roads that we in our community both enjoy and love. Camping sites within our community that we enjoy and love, unofficial camping sites all through our community, and areas that we want to access and have access to and continue to have access to. Whether we're talking about little horse trails, path trails, or roads, they all count. And our Board of Supervisors is committed to this RS 2477 identification and to keeping these roads and access to our public lands open and accessible to everybody who wants to enjoy them. And I want to thank those that are here and that's committed to that project. Now I want to introduce Mike Poindexter from Modoc County Sheriff, and it's been a pleasure to visit his hospitality in his community and to do one of these things there. And he's now returned the favor and coming out here, but I think it's mostly because it was too dang hot over there.
It's nice and cool here, which is really nice. I guess I drew the short straw.
That's coordination.
Well, Tom's right. I mean, you talk about passion. Everybody up here has passion. These actually started in Siskiyou County, and I missed the very first one, and I swore I'd never miss another one, and I'm going to do my best not to. I haven't since then. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Modoc County and what's happened and how I've come to be a part of this thing. You know, when I ran for sheriff, I mean, I've been a public service or a public servant my whole life, either in the service or in law enforcement, and I've taken the oath several times. And I don't know that I ever really took a second and thought about what it really means. And I was invited up to Josephine County, and Sheriff Gilbertson is, well, I wish, you know, God bless him, because he's got a real chore. But I met Fred Kelly Grant there, and I learned about coordination, and I started learning about our oath and the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights. And Fred talked extensively about coordination and land use, and I'm thinking, the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm going, well, I'm from Modoc County, you know, we're the last frontier. I mean, there's no way we have a land use plan and coordination in Modoc County. There's just no way. So I'm eager to go back and dig into this thing. And guess what? Modoc County had a comprehensive land use plan in place. We had a 47-page document, and we've been doing it, we've been coordinating with the federal government for probably 15 years. And we picked our battles over the years, won some, and had not such great success with others. And after that, we were invited to Las Vegas for a national constitutional sheriff's convention. And I couldn't afford to go, but Sheriff Mack managed to raise the money somehow to actually send the sheriffs that wanted to go at the National Constitutional Sheriff's expense. So off to Vegas I went, and I was further educated as to coordination. And I learned through all of this that the problems that are not unique, really. Some of them are specific to the heritage or the culture of the counties, but overall, we're all across the country. And we had over 100 sheriffs there. I'm sure we would love to have seen a lot more than that. But the issues are common. And in Modoc, I'll talk a little bit about law enforcement issues with federal law enforcement. And when I had this event, I hosted this, our Tea Party so graciously in Modoc County helped us put this on. We had Sheriff Palmer from Grant County, Oregon come down, who's had some real issues with federal law enforcement. And I've had a few issues in Modoc County with federal law enforcement. I had a local, used to be logger, who's now trying to make a living doing whatever he can. He has a permit with the Forest Service to haul gravel from a Forest Service gravel pit. And he was arrested for hauling gravel off the Forest Service land under his permit. The law enforcement officer stopped him on a public road, asked him for his permit. He said, "I'm not required to carry it. It's at home at the shop in the file." He was arrested. He was hauled, I don't know how or why, but he was hauled from a little town west of Alturas, near Canby, all the way to Tule Lake, across state line. It said they were going to take him over to John's jail and house him. And then they drove right past the cutoff going down 97. And the guy says, "Well, wait a minute. You just missed a turn. Now we're taking you to Tehama now." And I guess he ended up being housed down in Tehama County. So he got a nice tour in handcuffs in the back of this rig clear across Northern California. God knows how many hours he was back there. And I got wind of this and looked into it some. And I don't get to have this should never have happened. And if one of my deputies did this, he'd have been standing tall in front of me and he would have to answer. But I have no recourse with the federal law enforcement officer other than to say, "You're not welcome in Modoc County doing law enforcement." And there's lots of different reasons why. I don't get to hold this guy to the standard that I hold my own people to. You don't get to go out and I don't. My deputies don't get to go out and stop people for no reason because they think they might be doing something wrong. We have to have a reason. I don't know what his training is. So I said, I told this citizen of Modoc County, when this comes to court, let me know. I'll be happy to come down and testify for you as to what happened. Just recently, the federal government dropped its case against him, and I've heard that there was some discipline, although I don't know what it was, for the LEO, and he's still actually operating in the northwest part of Modoc County, but he certainly has no authority as far as I'm concerned. And that's just one issue. And then when I said, "Hey, this guy's no longer welcome here," now all of a sudden I've got my phone's ringing. I've got an appointment with his boss from Siskiyou County, and his boss's boss from wherever he was from, and his boss's boss's boss, and his boss's 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 boss from the Bay Area, all sitting in my office wanting to know what my problem is. And, you know, you guys are my problem. In this particular case, they also, just prior to all this, they asked to expand their law enforcement authority. And the California state sheriffs, the Western state sheriffs, and the individual sheriffs, as far as I know, said no. And they asked me why. And they asked me why I said no to that, and I reached in my file cabinet and I pulled out my document that they sent me explaining what they wanted to do. And then I went right to the last paragraph where it says that if they're able to do this, they will better be able to protect the natural resources, one, protect the U.S. Forest Service employees, two, and somewhere down at the end of that, protect the citizens and users on National Forest Service lands. And I said, that's in a nutshell, that's my problem. They said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, look, I've been a public servant my whole life. First thing I protect is the people. That's who I work for, and that's who I protect. And, you know, and like John says so eloquently, I like the birds and the frogs and everything else too. But quite frankly, who knows more about protecting those resources than the people that have been making a living utilizing them for 4 or 5 generations? It's a no-brainer. Again, common sense is out the window. And then I said, and the bottom line is, it's not Forest Service land. It's public land. And until you get that right, I don't want to see you back there again. We don't have as much of an issue with the travel management because, like I said, we're fortunate we have a comprehensive land use committee, and we have coordination, and we have addressed it. And we had we were lucky for a long time there. We had a very good Forest Service supervisor, and he agreed, and they haven't closed any roads. So, you know, that's a wonderful thing. But the bottom line on that whole deal is, I mean, you ask them, and they can't tell you why. You know, what's your reasoning for wanting to close these roads? They won't tell you. But they probably don't have one. They just want to do it. And so coordination comes back in again because, you know, it's a public safety issue. If they start putting gates up on roads and we have fires or we need to get there, we can't. And what about our economy again? You know, in Modoc County, I mean, we're really poor. I mean, we're really poor. I could teach Sheriff Gilbertson, granted I don't have the population he does, but I do have 4,200 square miles, the 10th largest county geographically. By the way, I have out of 58 counties, my budget is 57th. So, and why is that? You know, county government is scratching their heads going, well, you know, we don't have logging. Now they want to close our roads, and we do, believe it or not, we get people who like to come up to Modoc County and camp and recreate and use those roads. So that's important. You don't get to just close them without mitigating that with us. So we need to educate. This whole thing really is about education. We need to educate the people to say, look, we need to hold the federal government's feet to the fire because, like you've already been told, there are no less than 27 some odd U.S. codes, federal codes of regulation that require the federal government to coordinate. So we need to hold our feet to the fire and say, by God, you're going to do it. You know, we may not win every battle, but it affects our economy. Our board's going, where do we get money? Where's it going to come from? Well, you know, I tell this story. And it's sad, but it's true. Years ago, when I was raising my kids, used to be able to get a deer tag in Modoc County. That's pretty good mule deer hunting up there. And my wife would say, I remember one time in particular, hey, can you stop and pick up a loaf of bread on the way home today? Sure, no problem, honey. And I come home without it, and of course I'm in the doghouse. I just called you and told you to bring it. I know, but it's deer season. I forgot. You can't buy a loaf of bread in Modoc County during deer season. Well, nowadays you can't tell when deer season is. So how has that affected our economy? You bet it has. Was there any mitigation? No, none. And there needs to be. I want to read a couple things out of our county comprehensive land use management plan here. The Board of Supervisors, and I don't know who had the foresight in Modoc County years ago, because this was really unheard of, this coordination thing back then. But one of the critical duties of the board is to supervise and protect the tax base of the county. And that's per Government Code Section 23004. The board in Modoc County is well aware that the historical, overriding, and predominant goal of the county's citizens, and therefore its government, has been the continuation of a lifestyle which assures quiet enjoyment of private property rights and property interests, and assures the highest degree of protection to these rights. Property rights and interests are important to the independent people who live and work in this rugged, mostly remote county, which has an enormous land mass, larger than some states in the Union, but a population as small as some villages. People who live in this county are relying upon the land and its productive use. Private ownership and the incentive provided by private ownership is the driving force which supports the livelihood of all Modoc County citizens. The board is also well aware that at this time, federal and state managed lands make up over 3/4 of land mass in Modoc County, and that there are continuing efforts to increase that amount. Moreover, Modoc County's economy is dependent on business activities on federal and state managed lands, and these activities are inseparably tied to the remaining portion of private land in Modoc County. To a substantial degree, the county and its people are at the mercy of state and federal planning decisions, often to the detriment of local communities and citizens, and the board is of the opinion that such circumstances are contrary to the basic principles of freedom, liberty, and sound resource management. So the custom, culture, and economic base of Modoc County historically is a story retold in many western counties. Located at the convergence of the Lass and Applegate Trail, the settlement of the county is the history of livestock, farming, logging, mining, wildlife, and railroad industries led by hardy individuals willing to work and develop the resources to bring forth a community. The settlement of the county is based on the beneficial use of land at a time in history which precedes the misguided regulatory efforts which today threaten the same custom and culture. The people of Modoc County have historically and traditionally earned their livelihood from activities reliant upon natural resources. So, I mean, this is 1995. And when I say this is about education, that's what I mean. All counties need to get on board and get this together, and we need to educate them. Because, like I said, there's laws in place that say they have to do it, and they haven't been. And that's part of the problem why we are, in fact, that's the biggest part of the problem why we are the way we are. I want to talk a little bit about Modoc's spotted owl. No, it's actually a sage grouse. You know, Modoc County exports, I think we're second in the state as far as feeder calves. And farming is huge, but ranching is really right now our livelihood. And just like they're going after water and they're going after some kind of fingerling fish, in Modoc they're cutting off or stopping or trying to stop permittees from grazing public lands because of the sage grouse. And the thing is about all of this is we need to get, and I was talking to somebody today about this, we're like stuck to the dam with our fingers and our toes trying to plug the leaks. And just when we get one shut off, another one comes out, and we need to go on the offensive. We can't be on the defensive anymore. matter what it is. In Modoc, it's a sage grouse. You know, one rancher lost his permit 5 years ago. And it costs him probably $50,000, $60,000 a year that he doesn't have. And I asked him, so how's the sage grouse habitat since you haven't been on the permit? It's worse. So, I mean, come on. What's the real reason here?
Starving you out.
Yeah, it's common sense. This is just a ruse. It's a ruse. Just like John said, sage grouse, oh, I got a problem here. I'm going to fly to another spot. I'm going to go to another tree, or there's another reason. Predators, they won't even address it. Ravens. We got more juniper trees, they're like weeds. Ravens sit in those, they take the leks. And then, this is funny. I noticed in the paper that there was a meeting, and I don't know how or why they announced it in the paper, but on the sage grouse between the Forest Service and BLM. So I went, uninvited. And it's a room about this size, and it's lined with tables and visual aids and people from BLM and people from the Forest Service, and a few ranchers. And I'm going, my God, you know, I mean, it's great, it's beautiful. I'd like to have the money it costs just to put this thing on tonight. I could do a lot with that. I might even be able to save a position or add a deputy. Who knows? And it's really frustrating because I don't think that, you know, I think the Forest Service, you know, they get a lot of pressure from Western Watersheds and these other groups who have the money and the people and the backing. And they're basing their decisions, or they're dragging things out. Wild horses in Modoc County, you know, they're not indigenous to our county. They're really not. The wild horses we have in Modoc County are horses that have been lost or turned out over the years from ranchers, and that's another issue that's huge. We've got thousands of them, believe it or not. And our poor ranchers who have grazing permits, now, gee, that's to keep the grass down, number one, to fuel, and also to make the cows fat so they can sell them. Well, guess what? The horses are eating it all. There's no grass on the permit for the cows to eat. The only place on the permit where there's grass is a pen where the rancher had to haul hay to keep it in there to feed them. Well, how does that work? So we need to thin them out. Okay, we use a coordination. Here's an example of coordination that's not working so great. They're dragging their feet. We have to do a NEPA study. We have to do this study. We have to do that study. And federal government, well, Chief, I'm sorry, we don't have the money to do that right now. Are you kidding me? In the meantime, what happens to our economy and what happens to those ranchers? So they need to get off the ball and handle that kind of stuff. And I don't know, you know, like I said, you're not going to win every battle, but you have to take them on. John mentioned a little bit about, you know, getting some publicity. I think we're doing something right if we do, if it comes from the right people. You know, you can't make everybody happy, and people need to know. I don't think there's anything fanatical about being passionate. And I see passion in this room, I see passion up here, and I'm really proud to be a part of that. And I certainly, people can call it whatever they want, but it's important. It's important to us. It's important to us as public servants. We talk about the Constitution, we talk about sheriffs, and you know, people don't realize that sheriffs, and when you think about law enforcement in general across this nation, whether they be city or federal or state or county, which faction is actually responsible to and elected by the people? Sheriffs. That's it. No other entity responsible. And so maybe we're more apt to say, geez, you know, and not forget that. Because we do work for you guys, and the rest of them need to be reminded of that. Or maybe they should be elected as well, so they're accountable to you folks. I'm going to cut this off here. I've talked longer than I usually talk. Before I go, I want to ask the veterans in the room to stand up. Well, God bless you all. Thank you for your service. As we travel around doing these and the tea parties and everyone in the room's a patriot, it's amazing how many veterans there are, and God bless those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice that are rolling over in their graves right now as we fight this battle, and we owe it to them to continue to fight it. I'm going to make just one little quote, the same one I made last time to end this, and this is something that was written 200 years ago, over 200 years ago, could have been written this morning or tomorrow. And we talk about our founding fathers and their foresight. A government big enough to supply everything you need is big enough to take everything you have. The course of history shows that as a government grows, liberty decreases. Fight the fight, keep fighting the fight. And thank you all for coming.
At the end of the session, there'll be questions and answers. If you get a chance, there's 3x5 cards back there and some pencils, and if you have a question, please fill that out, and then we will be taking questions that way. It works best for us. We can filter through some of them and make it quicker. One of the issues that Del Norte County is facing, and this is something that came up with the land management plan that Six Rivers National Forest put into place in 1995, and that is, in 1995, they put in a plan. Unfortunately, despite the fact that they had numerous scientists and biologists and geographers and foresters and everybody else in there, they seemed to overlook one little fact. One little fact that they overlooked was that we have a little communication tower on the top of Red Mountain. That communication tower services 4 federal agencies, about 6 state agencies, our local government, and some private communications. It is a hub. It is the only hub that gets our communications, critical communications, from the state and federal government and local government out of Del Norte County to the south. We also have a repeater station up there on Camp 6, but that's pretty much to cover the north side of the county. This is the only way that we get south of us and down into California. It's critical to the public safety that that tower is there. Well, in their study, they forgot to put the fact that that's been a transmitter site. And so now they have told the state that as of 2012 or 12/22, they have to be off that site. 2022, they have to be off. Their lease is over, and they must move. Now, they've tried to repair the site, and they've been told, no, they can't really repair it. They can, kind of keep it together, but they're not allowed to change it, alter it, or replace it. The state has taken every action it can to try to get cooperation from the federal agency to replace that site and to make it, improve it, because they want to try to improve it. And they've been working with the Yurok tribe, who says that top of the hill is culturally sensitive to them. But unfortunately, they still say that on 2022, when your lease is up, you must be off that mountaintop. Now, there is no other mountaintop that will suffice. There is no other mountaintop that will provide us the communications out of Del Norte County. They don't care. Now, it didn't become culturally sensitive until, 2005. At that point is when they made the acquisition to the Yurok tribe that was a culturally sensitive site for them. So between 1995 and 2005, despite the state's repeated requests to have it designated as a transmitter site and please allow us to replace it, the National Forest keeps telling them, no, you must go. Unfortunately for Del Norte County, there's no replacement. If that transmitter site on the top of Red Mountain is to be replaced and gone, and some other mountaintop nearby is to, the people down into the valley, into the Klamath Town site, will not be able to be seen or heard with radio communication, because no other mountaintop will not be sufficient because it's overshadowed by Red Mountain. We are working with coordination efforts and with our state and local officials right now to try to get this to change. But these are the issues when land management plans are put into place and coordination is not even sought. This 95 plan, coordination was not sought with Del Norte County. And an existence of a site that has been critical since the 1935, when it was a site for fire watching. In the 40s, it was a site for, and a military site for watching for Japanese boats off our coast, and a radio site. Even had a airfield up there. And in 1957, the state of California took it over. Unfortunately, several lives were lost in the process of trying to get that site put into place. But in 1957, the state of California took it over, and it's been a CAL FIRE radio site ever since, and it serves as our communication hub for public safety to get out of Del Norte County. And at this point in time, the National Forest Service simply doesn't care. We have to be off that mountain.
They don't like you.
It's not me. They don't like the state of California. Anyway, those are the problems that we're facing, and these are the things of why sheriffs are involved. And at this point, I would be most pleased and honored to introduce Mike Downey, Humboldt County Sheriff.
First of all, I really appreciate this today. It's a great honor to be here and to talk to all of you. You know, I heard John talk and some others, and we talked about meeting with people. You know, and this is what it is all about. You know, we need to be accountable to you. You know, we're accountable to the voters of our counties in respect to what your desires and wishes are. So town meetings like this, in my book, is what it's all about. I talk to other electeds who sometimes share with me their fear to meet with the people. And I wonder why that fear is there. And I come away with the fact that when you shed light on things, sometimes some faults are brought to light and issues are brought to light. But how in the heck do we learn if we're not talking to you? This is where, you know, it all begins, and this is where it should all end, right here. We hear what the people have to say, we take that back, we institute those things that you who elected us to do, we take care of and we carry through with. That's what it's all about. One of the things that really touches my heart, and I've heard it said here today, and I use this term explicitly now, that we are a republic. We are not a democracy. We are a country of a rule of law, not a rule of mob. A republic looks out for the individual, not the mass. Even the mass is involved, but everybody's individual rights are considered in a republic. That's something we've missed, and we continue to be barraged in our schools, in the news. Everyone wants to use the word democracy. We are not a democracy, and we continue to lose that in our daily life. You know, we talk about community. We talk about heritage. We talk about what we are as a people. And I think back to where we are today, I've thought a lot about my own past, my own heritage. My father was a pilot of a B-17 during World War II. Flew his 25 missions over France and Belgium and Germany, and told me stories of the horror that he saw as a young man. My wife, who's in the audience, her father was a tail gunner in a B-17, was shot down, spent his 18th or 19th birthday as a prisoner of war, and was there for 3 years. I have a brother who served in Vietnam, and I have my third son, my fifth child, is getting ready to report to Fort Benning, Georgia on the 28th of July. And I just pray to God that what he's reporting for is the same reasons that those in my past reported for, was to continue a rich heritage for the country that we've all learned to love and to live in. But I see it slipping day to day. Well, Humboldt County, you know, what is Humboldt County? It's a county of about 3,570 square miles, population base of about 135,000. It's larger than a lot of other Northern California counties for one reason, because we have a lot of privately owned property in Humboldt County. And that's why Humboldt County is probably, well, it is the leader in timber in California because of that property that is privately owned. Now, in the past, my colleagues here, they had thriving lumber industries because they relied upon your land to harvest that timber for the use by you and us and everyone else in California. And that has stopped. That's why Humboldt County still is, I wouldn't say it's a thriving timber industry, but we do have a timber industry there. Funny thing is, though, much of our timber is being shipped to China. Go figure. But anyway, we also have a large cattle industry in Humboldt County. Fishing, you know, the poor salmon that were said to be almost non-extinct. They're saying this is the best run and that anyone can remember. One of my lieutenants brags to me all the time. He says, if I go out first thing in the morning, I can limit out in about an hour. And that hadn't been heard of in years. So the salmon are returning. Another thing Humboldt County is big on is marijuana. I'm going to spend some time talking about that. And something else that we were noted for this last year, we had an Occupy in Eureka. And in my book, it went on way too long. We had a lot of officials on both the county and city that were very concerned about taking any action for a number of reasons. But anyway, we finally were able to work through that. Occupy is gone in front of the courthouse. It was probably one of the vilest things I've ever seen in my life. When we talk about the rights of the individuals, I mean, here's a clear example of mob rule where the rights of the individuals, us that have to work there, and those that want to come and conduct business at the courthouse, was totally overlooked. In fact, I spoke at one of the Board of Supervisors meetings when they were putting an ordinance into place, and I talked about a republic and what it meant. And the funny thing about it is the occupiers couldn't really argue with me because they were operating under the same guise of the fact that the rights of the individual matter. So it was quite a time. But I think of what our role is as government and what government is supposed to do for us, the people. We the people. So let me talk about marijuana, since I already threw it out there. You know, I have to give credit to Sheriff on my left, Tom Allman. Tom did something that was unprecedented in California. And he's an entrepreneur, right, Tom?
I have a good business plan.
You bet. Tom took a state law that was put into effect back in 1996 that was poorly written and poorly put out to the public, and under the guise of compassionate use, but it was really a disguise to allow commercial growing of marijuana in California. And what happened was Tom looked at this and said, you know what, we have a problem policing this issue, so he came up with a plan. And it was a darn good plan. And they actually were able to garner revenue off of those that were growing supposedly legal marijuana to sustain their programs to check on the marijuana, deal with those that were abusing the law, and to deal with land use issues. Well, the federal government came and said, you know what, and I'm not an advocate of, don't get me wrong, I'm not an advocate of marijuana by any means, but they came along and said, you know what, Sheriff Allman, County of Mendocino, and anybody else in California that wants to try to step out on your own, you're wrong. And we are going to come down on you, and it's illegal. In our book, marijuana is illegal, is illegal, is illegal. And that's the way it is. So your county suspended the plan that you had. So after seeing this, I realized in Humboldt County, we have a hell of a problem with marijuana. I worked marijuana 20 years ago out in the field, cutting and whacking and stacking and eradicating, and I have never seen marijuana like it's being grown today. And 215, believe it or not, folks, is being abused to the hill. And so I decided what I need to do is, if the federal government is going to rattle the sabers, as I like to put it, then I need their help. And I need their help to deal with the marijuana issue in Humboldt County because I'm not getting it from the state. The state of California is broke. The state of California has disbanded their interdiction of drugs pretty much. Department of Justice, Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement is pretty much gone. I, as a sheriff, have taken over the drug task force within our county, which has always been a state-run task force, and it's now under the office of the sheriff. But I realize that there are no resources to deal with a problem that is impacting our community on a daily basis. So I went to the federal government. I've met with the U.S. Attorney in the Northern District. I've met with the DEA. I met with a number of people starting back in October and told them, you're telling us what we need to do. And this is a federal issue. I believe that there are state issues, but I think this is a federal issue, especially if the federal government is saying you cannot do that. Then you need to come in and you need to help me deal with this problem. So I have gotten some help from the federal government in that regard, with resources and that type of thing. But interesting enough, this last week, I have a couple of my agents that are actually cross-deputized as drug enforcement agents, so they've written some federal warrants, and we had a number of federal officers up here helping us. We took down 3 or 4 major complexes in our county, and we arrested somewhere in the vicinity of 20 to 25 Bulgarians, believe it or not. Big enclave of Bulgarians. They were from Chicago, from San Francisco, from Bulgaria, all over the place. And truly a federal case. We have an international implication here. Well, I come to find out that the U.S. Attorney's Office was reconsidering whether they wanted to file on this case, making it a state case. The other thing I thought was very interesting, and this should touch each of you tenderly, is there was 2 agents from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, that came along. I've never seen that before. A federal entity, and their job is to what? Protect the environment. Well, I'll tell you right now, the environment is not being protected by these marijuana growers. What they're doing out there in the hills is unbelievable. So these 2 EPA agents come. The first day there was 2. The second day there was 1, because the one that stayed home said it was too hard and he wasn't going to come back out. But the one agent that was there, talking to my deputy, said, "Nah, we're not coming back." They said, "Really?" "Yeah, we're not going to come back. We're going to tell our bosses we're not coming back. The U.S. Attorney's been pushing us for years to get involved, but we realize this really isn't our thing." I was trying to draw a nexus there. Environmental protection, we can show that our environment is being dramatically impacted, but it's not your thing. I could not figure out what the problem was. Well, to put it simply, this is what their answer was. It's not our thing because it's dealing with individuals, and it's not dealing with industry or business. And this is the problem. They're so in tune to stifling business. And you want to talk about no growth in our country, it's because business is being stifled by these federal agencies that care nothing about what is going on. They want to stifle our growth, and that's exactly what's happening. So, in short, what has happened is we're working with our own county environmental agencies trying to deal with this issue. I've heard the spotted owl talked about, and that type of thing. And so let's talk a little bit about environmental issues again. About 2 weeks ago, I put on a symposium in our county, and I had some of the federal marijuana people come in, county agencies, partners with both state and national partners. There was a young man there from the UC Davis Extension campus, and he's a biologist. And he came in and he had a PowerPoint presentation. He was drawing a parallel. He was telling us about what rodenticides are, and rodenticides work similar to those medicines are used to stop clotting of your blood. And it's a buildup in the system. And he was talking about first and second generation. He lost me somewhere along the way. But anyway, he talked about how it works in all these different animals. And what he has been studying for the last few years are fishers. And fishers, if you don't know, are the mammals that are found in the redwood forest and the deep, dense forests of Northern California. And they found that there was a direct connection between these rodenticides and the killing of these fishers. And they couldn't figure out why at first. High mortality rate. They're talking about these animals that are in deep, dense forests of Northern California, far away from urban areas, far away from agricultural areas where these rodenticides are commonly used. They couldn't figure out why is this happening. So they began to do a little research in the areas surrounding these forests and in these forests, and they found the problem was commercial marijuana grows. They found buckets of rodenticides left open. They found grains and that type of thing that would bring the rodents in, laced with rodenticides on the ground. And believe it or not, they found that as these fishers died, spotted owls were eating them. And guess what? They have a high mortality rate of spotted owls with rodenticides in their systems. And deer kill. They're finding deer with the same problem. High concentrations of rodenticides in their systems. And they can't figure out why this is happening. Well, it's because we have an industry that's unregulated and is out of control. And we talk about, like I said, I talked about the timber industry and how we have a high rate of privately owned timber company in Humboldt County. And for years I've heard that one of the problems with the timber industry was the fact that their road systems they put in, their clear cutting, which is a fallacy, haven't clear cut in many, many years, but all this silt is washing into the rivers and into the watersheds, killing the fish, damming up, causing problems, so forth and so on. Well, last year, myself and the district attorney for Humboldt County, I said, let's take an overflight and look at some of the problems we're having with marijuana. And we took countless pictures of illegally made pads out in the middle of nowhere. They've taken a dozer and disturbed the soil and made these large building pads with these huge greenhouses on them to grow marijuana in. None of this ground is being stabilized in any way. It's fresh, open dirt and soil that's been exposed. And when it rains, and it rained this last year, I guarantee you that the silting of the streams and the tributaries and the watershed was far worse than the timber industry could have done. But they want to regulate those activities. So the problem is, I see this upside down. We're regulating those that are trying to get our economy going and letting the others go. And it's a free ride. The same thing with another problem in Humboldt County is if a rancher or someone that has a timber operation, they have to register that they have insecticides, pesticides stored on their properties for use in their industry. What goes along with that is the county then requires that they have a permit. And along with that permit, they have to be subject to inspection. So they'll go out and they'll inspect. And when they're out there, they'll inspect their tanks that are holding their insecticides and pesticides, and they'll go, oh, by the way, what's that tank over there? Well, that's where I keep my diesel. I have to have diesel fuel on the property to run my equipment. Well, we're going to inspect that too. Well, that's not part of the permitting process, but so what we're having is some of these ranchers are now being, and timber people are now being inspected on things that are never part of the plan. So they're starting to buck up against that and say, and I've told them before also, so tell them no. They don't have a right to go over and inspect your tank. They have a right to be there and inspect your insecticide. Can't inspect your tank. So what's happening is they're making it so difficult for these people to continue legitimate businesses. Legitimate businesses. So I asked some of these inspectors, what about the guy next door who's got 5,000 marijuana plants and an indoor grow He's got a generator big enough to power Delaware County easily, and they have fuel leaking on the ground 24/7. What about them? Well, it's Mike, that's an illegal operation. We don't deal with that. We only deal with legal ones. What is wrong with the picture? I hate to tell you this, but those running the store need to go back to school and learn how to run the store, because that's what's the problem with America right now. And I think you probably all share what I said earlier. You know, we are regulating ourselves out of business in this country.
Amen.
And the longer we continue to allow this to happen, the worse it's going to get. And I talked about heritage, and I talked about what many of the veterans here, and I salute each one of you, fought for over these many years. You know, this is not what my dad wanted to see. I'm sure many veterans are shaking their head too, saying, well, is this what we're all about? You know, is this what we've come to? I think it's time for America to wake up, and I see that happening. But have we woken up in time? It's time for us to wake up and stand up for what is right in this country. And I think what we've shared here today are many things that are wrong. And what we're asking for as your elected officials is for you to stand with us. Not behind us, but with us. So I've talked way too long, and again, I want to thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Since 2008, there's been a 44% reduction in the general wealth of our country, individually. The other day, the economist known as Dr. Doom, Nori Rubini, he says that his projection by 2014 that the United States, the world actually, will see an economic collapse that'll make 2008 look like nothing. That the loss of individual wealth will be cataclysmic, because we have done everything that we possibly can do. We have done everything humanly possible. We have shot every bullet out of our economic recovery gun, and nothing has changed the course that the economy is on. And historically, no government has ever done what we have done and had their economy not collapse. We have no country has printed as much money, flooded as much money, and now monetizing their own debt. And we are doing it at historic proportions. So every time I come to these things, be aware. Watch, read, prepare. Don't be caught unaware. These things are happening. They're real. You know, why is our government, why is Homeland Security practicing civil unrest? Why are they practicing that? Why are they driving tanks through St. Louis? Why are they practicing urban suppression on city streets in our communities? Why? It's not because they don't know how. It's not because it's because they know. They know that what's coming is inevitable, that it will happen. When, I can't tell you. But Mr. Rubini thinks 2014. And he is known to be fairly accurate with his predictions. So please, watch and be aware, because our communities, our country depends on our vigilance, but also depends that we cling, because when times are tough, when economies collapse, and people are seeking refuge and solace, sometimes that is when someone rises up and says, I can save you. I can protect you. I can feed you. I can clothe you. All you have to do is follow me. There are two ways. Anybody, not just Obama, anybody, when times are tough and people are hurting and afraid, somebody will come along and say, I can save you. The only thing that can save us is It's ourselves. Cling to the Constitution, cling to the individual responsibility, and cling to our freedom. I now get to introduce those who travel farthest. I want to thank Dave Henkrat for coming up here all the way from Tehama County. And again, I think it's just because it's too damn hot over there. I had the pleasure of being down in Red Bluff, and what an event that was. And I so enjoyed being down that area and visiting and seeing the people in his community. And it is one of the pleasures that I've had as a sheriff to be able to travel up and down the state of California. What a wonderful place we live in. Unfortunately, it's kind of messed up right now. But please, welcome Sheriff Dave Henkrat.
Well, thank you all. First thing I want to do is I want to thank the organizers of this event, because if you've never participated in organizing an event like this, or a campaign, dinner, anything the public gets involved with, it can be an overwhelming task. But it can be done as we've seen here. I want to thank the Tehama County contingent for coming. And yes, yesterday was 104 in Tehama County in Red Bluff, so it's a nice break to come over here and visit with you all. So, why is the Tehama County Sheriff in Norte County? Actually, this question was asked of me during the first event in October of last year, when Sheriff Lopey asked us to come to, kind of the breakout event in Siskiyou County. Well, I'm here to support our sheriffs. I'm here to support the citizens. And as the chief law enforcement officer in Tehama County, it's very important for me to share what's going on in Tehama County with everybody in the state. So that's why I'm here. Also, I'm here to become educated on what's going on around us. I'll say this several times, I'm very fortunate to be the Tehama County Sheriff. Tehama County is an agricultural community. It's very diverse. Fruit, nuts, cattle, timber, a little bit of industry. And through no fault of my own, we're doing okay for now in Tehama County. So when I'm asked to get involved in these events, even though it's not as dire in Tehama County as it is in other counties, I'm not going to sit on my hands and wait for that direness to occur in Tehama County. Be proactive. I want to be proactive and stay ahead of the curve, so that as things start moving from north to south, we're prepared to deal with and learn from lessons we've learned, already experienced by other counties. So what's happening in Tehama County? Travel management plan. Yeah, it sounds harmless. However, and again, thanks to some citizens in our county who are ahead of the curve, we have a coordination committee in Tehama County, and we're dealing with the travel management plan. Maybe not as aggressively as we should, but with the guidance of citizens who are more educated in this area than me, we continue to forge ahead. And the Shasta Trinity National Forest, we have made some advances in not having to set back and listen to roads being closed, because we beat the drum up here, but our primary responsibility as sheriffs is public safety. Okay, and if we're not able to, we have the marijuana problem too, thanks to, I guess probably the rest of the states can thank us for marijuana. However, we're very proactive with the enforcement of marijuana laws, the illegal portion of the laws. And we have 4 national forests in our county, so we're very active in our forests, trying to protect our citizens who still like to use the forest, and to prevent the crimes from occurring in the forest. So when we hear about roads being closed in our forests, it hinders our ability to, 1, enforce the laws, and 2, develop search and rescue missions to try and save our citizens who sometimes get lost in the forest. So we've created a coordination committee. I'm getting very lucky. On our committee we have 2 board of supervisors. We have our county council who's actively involved. We have a great group of citizens that are involved in it, and they represent timber, water, forestry, water, grazing, all those interests. So we're moving forward with the coordination process. And I can assure you that I would not have become as well educated, trying to become well educated on coordination, if I wasn't involved with this group of people up here and our group of people that are, the Public Land Committee for the State Sheriff's Association. We talked about a little bit about the fact that as elected sheriffs and constitutional officers, we represent all people in our jurisdictions. And that's very important to me, that we represent everybody in our jurisdiction, because we have all different walks of people in Tama County in the North State, and we have to represent them with no bias. So, that's one of my mantras. We talked about bureaucracy. It's kind of ironic sitting here listening, and we've listened to bureaucracy for years, but one of the campaign speeches that I prepared 2 years ago during our campaign was the fact that we've created this bureaucracy. Why can't we undo it? And I think that's part of the message that we're trying to get across from up here down to the citizens of our counties, that we need to back off a little bit on this bureaucracy, and I think we can do it. So I want to tell you a real quick story about a coordination meeting that occurred, and the fact that citizens have told me that you have all this power, but unless you push and push and push, nothing's going to happen with the federal and state government. And so, okay, so we're having a coordination meeting with a national forest that's in our county recently. And one of the big issues in this is in this national forest, it has been so constricted with road closures that the economies of communities in the forest are being choked. The life's being choked from them. So we invite the forest manager to come talk to us, and we're talking about these road closures and, blah, 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 blah. And they offer us the fact they're going to open a few miles of roadway. Right? Great. So one of our citizens on the committee asks, well, when's this going to happen? Well, it may be a year from now. Well, why? Well, it just takes time to do this. Well, why does it take so long? Well, and the engineer for the forest was sitting in the audience. So the forest manager turned around and started looking at the engineer. And she's like, well, we have to sign it. Okay. All right. So the citizen on our committee says, well, we have an active snowmobile group up there that will take care of the signage if that's what it takes. We'll go do it for you. Well, we have to get the signs. Okay, well, how long does it take to get the signs? Well, have you actually ordered them yet? They're being ordered as we speak. So I tell that story because, I'm as guilty as any of you all. When I was growing up, and even most of my career, I thought government knew everything, right? I thought that, the local, state, federal government, they always do the right thing. They're looking out for us.
They are.
And as I started to go through becoming mature in my career, and then I get to the position where I'm at, one of the reasons I ran for sheriff was I didn't think things were going right, was that, our government is made up of people. And those people can be misled and misinformed just like we can. So we need to get involved. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Any registered foresters here? Yes. One in the back. Okay. As I become more educated in this world, I met with a forester a couple days ago, and I spent several hours listening to him. And I know about the forest. I spent my entire life, professionally and personally, in the hills and in the forest. So I know what's going on out there. But when I said we have some timber stuff going on in our forest, we have 4 national forests. We also have 3 timber companies in our county. We have Crane Mills, we have Collins Pine, we have Sierra Pacific. And I always wondered why, they're logging, but not to the extent that, I think we should be, or how are these guys able to log and work in the woods? but we can't work on the national forest. So I read my first timber management plan some time ago, and yeah. But what I learned in reading the timber management plan, and part of my message to you all today, and talking to this forester, is these are not willy-nilly things. When we create a timber management plan, today or historically, they're just not, we're going to fly by the night, we're going to go out and take these trees. Yeah, we've made some mistakes in the forestry world, but they're comprehensive studies. And in the past, they've been studies that have involved both sides. The private sector who's bidding for the job, and the government sector who's protecting the land's rights. So when we talk about undoing bureaucracy, why can't we go back to that aspect of timber management? I did a radio program last week from a Sacramento radio station, and it's one of those things when you become the sheriff, you people pop up from everywhere. Hey, remember me? Yeah. Yes, I do remember you. I met you years ago. Well, would you do this program? Okay, so I did this question and answer thing. It was scripted. I had time to prepare. I think it went pretty well, but it was in the Sacramento area. So the last question was, how do we get our sheriff involved with what you guys are doing? Yeah. So in fairness to Sac County Sheriff, I said, well, you know, Sac County is different from the North State.
No kidding.
Right? We have the same crime, but geographically, we're different in all aspects. So please don't blame the Sac County Sheriff if he's not getting involved with what's going on in the North State as far as our issues up here. Which brings me to, I think, a monumental leap that we've made with our North State in the fact that, you know, when I became sheriff, I felt I don't want to be totally a political monster. So with the State Sheriff Association, which I'm learning is a fairly powerful organization as far as a watchdog on laws and you know, everything else that's occurring in the state, I was real hesitant to get involved in that. You know, my thing is, I'm the Tama County Sheriff. I want to take care of what's going on in Tama County. That's my primary responsibility. But when Sheriff Lopey came up with the inaugural event in October up in Siskiyou County about what's going on up there, I think it was Tom Allman's idea after the event. You know what? We all have the same issues. We should get together and we should talk about what's going on in our jurisdictions as North State sheriffs, rural sheriffs. And so, you know, I said, well, that's a great idea, and I want to be part of that. So, as time evolved and things moved forward, and yeah, we're not anti-government. We're not, you know, we're not way out there on the right. We're not way on the left. We developed an ad hoc committee with the State Sheriff Association for Public Lands Committee, and so as time went on. Our last state meeting through the State Sheriff Association, we became a standing committee with the State Sheriff Association, which is a big deal for us because it gets back to that question of how do I get my Sacramento County Sheriff involved with you all? Well, in a way, he is being involved because as we develop and research laws, projected laws, bills that affect us as North State communities, we can broadcast that to the rest of the state sheriffs and they start hearing about what's going on in our communities. Because just like we've learned by doing all these talks, the more we talk about our issues and the more educated we become on the issues, the less daunting, the less scary they are, and they really come down to things that we can attack to help our citizens. And real quick, because I know we got the closer coming up, I drew a good straw. You know, most of my career has been as a worker bee. It's been major crimes and dope, and that's been my career. And so when I think about, you know, somebody's already said it, we're on our own here. We can't rely on the federal government, the state government. We're government at its purest. We're the first rung, the first step of government. We're the people. We're people up here. The only difference between us and you, the only difference is we have the ability to deprive you of your most precious, God-given American right, and that's your freedom. We can take your liberty from you. That's really the only difference between you and us. Okay? So it's important to remember that. Chuckle from the... Now I want to talk about water real quick. One water story. One water story. You know, again, we take it for granted. All the time growing up, I take it for granted. But, you know, it's kind of a little bit of perspective with water. It's abundant in our North State. My son, who I'm very proud of, he's 26 years old. He did 2 tours in Iraq. He's a crew chief on a helicopter. This really put it in perspective. He called me one night. You know, he's an air crew guy, so he's got these perks other guys and gals don't have over there. So he calls me on the sat phone, and he's mad. I go, "What's wrong with you?" "Well, they had to fly a general from one side of the country to the other, and it was for a birthday." And he doesn't understand at that time. He didn't understand the bureaucracy and the politics. You know, he's 26. Well, at that time he was 20. So he's just hopping mad. I said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "We had to fly this general from one side of the country to the other, and they're flying over these rivers. The only time they get shot at is when they fly over the rivers, because why? That's where people live." Yeah. So I'm going to wind up with this. It's been said before. It's just like we have to do. Beware of what you hear in the media and on the internet, and always question and verify what Dave Hencraft says when you see it and you're not a person-to-person context. And thanks again for getting me out of the 104-degree heat from Red Bluff, California.
The women in my life at this very moment have instructed me to say the following. If you have any questions, please, last call for questions. Please fill out your cards and make sure that you fill them out so Loma can get them up to us for this last session. Also, we will ask the people, it says here, to if you have our flyer, on the back end there is supportruralamerica.com. If you go to that site, if you have photos, if you want to engage with comments and download things onto your media, onto there, please take advantage of that, because we want to try to get this out and spread out as far as possible, far and wide. Supportruralamerica.com. Also, pieandpolitics.com also links us to that. I want to acknowledge KFUG Radio. They are our Luke, the talk radio, and also do good rock music, by the way. And they are here today, I should say, and I want to thank them for coming and being part of this. Also, our local paper's here, right? Sure. Yep. I want to thank them for coming to this, because I do know you drew the short straw, because the other gal got the assignment of the Gasky raft race. So that's got to be the choice one today, because you're floating down the river. That's got to be okay assignment. So I want to thank them for being here.
We're also going to donation buckets are going to go around.
Okay.
Pay for the building?
Yes, the donation buckets are going around. If you would please, these things are not free. Help us out, because we are not getting any government grants. Okay. Also, if anybody wants to know more about supporting the Sheriff of America, or they want to learn about the National Constitutional Sheriff's Organization, I got Ray and Loma back there on the table, and they are heading up this thing, and they said, use us. So please go back and use them. Okay, as they want to tell you all about national sheriffs. Okay, my wife and Karen are holding up these sign-up sheets. If you are interested in getting information about Support Rural America, sign your name up, your email, and we will get it to you. I also want to not forget Aaron, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming this way and for participating and donating and giving all of your time to us. I also want to thank Liz Bowen, who is one of our major ramrods behind this this program and project, and there she is up front. Thank you so much. From Siskiyou County, yes. All right. Also on your flyers, if you don't have them, please. There is August 18th, Mendocino County. We will be in Ukiah doing this. We're taking this thing on the road again. September 22nd. That's a soft September 22nd, according to Gil anyway. Soft September 22nd. We may be up in Grants Pass. We will be doing one in Josephine County though, sometime around there. And then in October, we will be hopefully sometime around in October, unnamed date at this time. We will be doing a Reading event. And I want to take this time, at this point, to introduce Mendocino County Sheriff Tom Ullman. Now, Tom has been absolutely phenomenal in this process that we have not only invested the Lands Committee, we've been involved in these kinds of constitutional sheriff talks. And we have meetings periodically with state sheriffs meetings, and we stand around. And Tom is not abashed or shy. He sits there and he tells them, listen, he says, honestly, he says, I know you guys chuckle. I hear you talk every once in a while. There's a constitutional sheriff, what like that. He says, we hear them. And Tom says, listen, if you want to know, ask us. If you want to know what problems we're facing, we'll tell you. If you want to know what these things are, he says, but they're real. They're real. They may not be happening in your county, or you may not know about them, but they're real. And these issues are real. And he has put it out there time and time again in order to bring forward this issue, this group, the things that are happening in the North State to rural America, but also that sheriffs should understand not only their oath, but their duty. And he does. And I want to thank him. Bring Tom.
And the best news is, I may be the shortest talk up here, okay? You've been here a long time. You've been here several hours. The organizers have done a splendid job. Thank you very much. To the citizens of Del Norte County, you have a fantastic sheriff. And I want to tell you why. Hold up the applause because it's going to be worth it. He represents you very well at the State Sheriff's Association because, as you know, he's not bashful either. Just the opposite. On the way up here, I was listening to one of your local radio stations, and your commercial was on there regarding your text messages of solving crimes. A very innovative way to do it. It's the first time in the state I've heard it being done, and I want to learn more about it today. He's an incredible representative of being a good family man. And thank you, Mary. It's great to see you and your whole family on these state sheriffs meetings there, and he's a very good example for the rest of the sheriffs to look at. So Dean, thanks for hosting this, and thanks for being who you are. If I said he was the most senior sheriff up here, I don't mean he's the oldest because I don't know the answer, but he is the most experienced elected sheriff that we have, and that means a lot at state sheriff's meetings. When Dean Wilson speaks, people listen, and that's very, very good. So you've heard who we are, you've heard a little bit who we aren't, and I want to cover that a little bit more because I know there's video cameras going, and there have been people who have edited some of our presentations, and they've turned it into really who we aren't, and they've put it on YouTube. And I'm here to ask whoever's videotaping this if you'd have the courtesy of not taking out the context of what we're saying. We believe in what we do. We don't get compensated anything for doing this. I assure you, we're here because we believe that our country needs some help. We believe the state sheriffs are in a very lucky place to provide the assistance to our citizens. We believe that we are not just the sheriff of the county, but we're the watchkeeper. We are the people who, when something happens, we're the ones who say, you're on foul. We're the watchkeeper not just because we think we are, but because the Constitution gives us that little authority. The Constitution of the state allows a sheriff to represent you and to go to the state legislature and represent what your feelings are to our other elected leaders, parts of the legislative branch. We're part of the executive branch. And so one of the problems that we have, and every speaker up here has covered it, about the federal government. We are expected to enforce laws and policies which are not passed by elected leaders but made by federal bureaucrats, and that's the problem. That's a serious problem. We have bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., I assure you, that don't know if Mendocino ends with an O or with an A, but they're making laws that affect the national forest in Mendocino County. And it's a big problem. And I've certainly let it known to them who I am, and I'm watching what they do, and I welcome them. And if you're a federal employee in this room, I want you to know we are not against you. All we're asking is for the courtesy of you contacting us, coming to our office, or we'll go to your office, and sitting down with us and having a discussion of what you're trying to accomplish and what we are trying to accomplish too. And chances are we can figure out a way to make it work, and we're not going to trample the rights of the citizens that we're sworn to protect. That's what we're here for. And I'm not making light or trying to weigh heavy on a bumper sticker that we've all seen, but there is something that we have in common. We all love our country, but we fear some very important, very strong parts of our government. And that's why we're throwing the foul flag down to say our government agencies are running afoul, and we have the ability to be in the Huffington Post. Let me tell you, when you're in the Huffington Post standing up against the government, that says a lot right there. This is not a political year for any of us. We're not running for re-election at all. With the exception of one county in the state, all sheriffs run for re-election or initial election the same year as the governor. Now, you might wonder what one county is a little different. That's San Francisco, and it's not working out for them too well right now. But the reason we're doing this is because we do not want to be associated with any extreme organizations. We're doing this as sheriffs. We're doing this to say we have spent our career standing up for what's right and for what's wrong. And now we have the luxury of being in a position of saying governor, and the governor comes and he's met with all of us individually at meetings, and we have the ability to express our concern to him. And I know people in this room may have some bad words about the governor, and I'm going to tell you right now, I grew up in Humboldt County in a very conservative family. My mom's a retired school teacher, dad's worked in the woods. The Governor Brown from the 70s is not the governor we have right now. This governor is cutting costs, and he's cutting spending, and he has not cut law enforcement like he has cut other agencies. So I'm not, even though I'm a very conservative person, I'm certainly not going to criticize Governor Brown, because there's many people in Sacramento who are entrenched in the Democrat politics who are not very happy with Governor Brown. So that says something right there. And it does. Now, my father is turning over in his grave for me saying that. I want you to know that. Amen. Yes, I'm sorry, Dad. But I want to tell you about Mendocino County and what my problems are. And none of these problems are insurmountable. These problems are able to be solved if we could get the right people to the table to sit down. And I've been to Washington, D.C. a half dozen times trying to get the right people, and it just doesn't always work. Even when you make appointments and you fly all the way back to Washington, sometimes your reputation precedes you, and that person is all of a sudden busy because it's not just going to be an easy discussion with them. It's going to be, I'm the sheriff of the county, and I want to know why these roads are being closed, because these roads are not yours. These roads belong to the citizens. And the conversations get heated at times, but on the good side, on the very positive side, there are bureaucrats who listen to us. And things could be worse. I'm not always a glass is half empty kind of guy. I think the glass is half full. And the fact that the state sheriffs now have a lands use committee, and we have constitutional sheriffs, which in the whole scheme of things doesn't sound very scary to me. It sounds like a very, very safe group of guys to hang around with. I'm going to guess there's more guns in this room than in my armory at the office. Because the Second Amendment does reign in these counties, I assure you of that. But as a sheriff, I have the legal right to know when a road's going to be closed on federal property. I have a legal right to know when a new gate is going up. I have a legal right to know when a cattle lease is being canceled for no reason. And these things are not occurring. The privileges that the federal government has had of this unencumbered policy making is really and truly about to come to a head. Because what we're saying is you don't have that privilege. You have to sit down with us and talk. And so when these gentlemen up here are begging for your help to stand with us, and I like that. I think it was Dave. Don't stand behind us, stand beside us. That's exactly what we're saying. When we write a letter to the editor and we tell you what the problems are, we're needing help. That's our SOS right there. To say, these are the problems we have, these are the people who are creating the problems, and will you help us? Because we know there's going to be people who go against us. We know that. And we're looking for a good representation of the people to stand with us to say, you're right, we will not have our rights trampled on. And that's exactly what's happened. The sheriff, thank you. The sheriff has two main responsibilities in his or her county. And we do have some female sheriffs in the state. We have some very good female sheriffs in the state. The sheriff, of course, protects your right. You don't need me to tell you that we enforce the law. That's what is most important that people think. But just as important as enforcing law is protecting the rights of the citizens. And that could be summed up why we're here. Because the rights of our citizens, the rights of timber growers, the rights of cattle growers, or cattle raisers, have been trampled on. And they've been replaced by rights of extremists, including commercial marijuana growers. And the rights of commercial marijuana growers in my county last year seemed to be spiking, but this year things are a little bit more in check. But one of my concerns with the federal government is that in the Mendocino National Forest, a 92,000 acre crown jewel of our county, and on Mendocino's county side, they have one federal law enforcement officer to cover our fair share of the Mendocino National Forest. Well, it's not right. You can't say this is a national forest and not give it adequate law enforcement, because then the responsibility will come to us, and we're not going to turn away from enforcing the law. We're going to enforce the law, and we're going to protect your land. But it's not fair that the federal government claims it and doesn't give us the adequate resources to cover it. And when they say, thank you very much. So last year was a watershed moment for us with the Mendocino National Forest. And the marijuana operations were getting out of control with illegal aliens. I joked about we needed to set up a satellite office of the United Nations because we arrested people from Bulgaria and Israel and England and Russia and Finland. I don't know what they are doing here. But we had 14 arrests from other countries in the Mendocino National Forest. And to say that this is a local sheriff's problem is a little bit outrageous. I would say that this is a problem that the federal government needs to spend more resources on. If the federal government is going to continue to list marijuana as an illegal substance, if that's what their choice is, if that's what their desire is, then they need to follow up. Because you may not agree with me on this one, but I encourage the federal government to come into my county and enforce marijuana laws on the condition that if they make an arrest, they prosecute the person in U.S. court. Because that's only fair, because what happens is, and it happens on a regular basis, whether you agree or disagree with legitimate medical marijuana, that really is a moot point right now. I've never grown it or smoked it, but it is the law of California. And are people abusing it? Of course they're abusing it. And people buy race cars that drive on the freeway and they break the law too. So we as government officials have to control people who are abusing the laws that we have out there. But what happens is the federal government will come in and they will make an arrest, and they'll take the report to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the U.S. Attorney's Office will say, we're not going to prosecute, and so then the federal agency will take it to the local district attorney and ask them to prosecute. So what we have here is we have eradication in the name of the federal government, which is okay, and prosecution in the name of the state government, with no money coming into the state government to assist with the prosecution. Whether you agree or disagree with medical marijuana, I'm telling you, that in itself is not how the law was intended. The separation between the, thank you. The separation between the federal government and the state government is very, very clear. And one of the issues that we have right now in going in front of the Congress, and Sheriff Lopey has been very, very strong on this, of writing very good letters. We love reading his letters. It's like they come from an attorney or something. They're great. Is the federal government wants to give blanket state and local enforcement powers to all federal peace officers, and that is wrong. That is wrong. Well, the state sheriffs, of course, wrote a letter to all of our congressmen opposing it. I took a different view. I said, wait a minute, let's tell them they're more than welcome to have federal or state and local authority as long as they'll give our deputies federal authority. And everybody in the room said, that'll never happen. So I hope that doesn't come to, because right now what we have the ability to do, and I'm going to say right now that a sheriff that isn't here, but he's very strong, and is Sheriff Basinko from Shasta County. What we have the right to do as sheriffs is we can cross-deputize a federal law enforcement officer if he meets our criteria. Because right now, if we hire a deputy sheriff, we're telling our citizens, we believe this is going to be a good deputy sheriff for you. He's fair, he's going to tell the truth, he's passed a psychological, he's fit, he can do his firearms training, he can do everything. And what we're saying is before you blanket deputize every federal law enforcement officer, let us continue to know who they are. We'll sit down with them, we'll interview them, because we do not want them to come into our counties and infringe upon our citizens' rights without us knowing exactly who they are, and there could be repercussions. Because when a law enforcement officer comes to your house, really and truly, you're going to submit, at least to whatever the law allows you to do and allows him to do. We want to make sure that we're letting the right people come into our county so our citizens' rights are not abused. That's very, very important. So, real quickly, what we did last year is 6 counties, Trinity, Tehama, Glenn, Colusa, Lake, and Mendocino. We put together our own local marijuana eradication effort in the Mendocino National Forest. It was referred to as Operation Full Court Press. In 3 weeks, we eradicated 632,000 marijuana plants. We removed 57,000 pounds of trash from the National Forest, 152 arrests. Only 17% of those were illegal aliens. Actually, a lot of them were people from within the state or within the nation coming there because no one had enforced the law. And that's a very good representation of what we're trying to show the federal government. If you want to keep maintaining this property, why don't you do this? Because I want those tourism dollars to come back in my county. I want deer hunters to come up and realize the only other shots they hear are people who are shooting deer, not trying to scare them out of the National Forest. I want people to recreate in the National Forest. I want to preserve summer steelhead, which is in Trinity County. Trinity County, he's not here, but he was at a wedding, I think. In the northern part of the National Forest. These are all things we want to do, but the federal government has been very slow on the response to this. So when you have a congressman, and this is an election year, this is a very good year to be an American, because we have the ability to sit down and talk with the people who are running and say, what is your stance on cross-deputizing every federal law enforcement officer? What is your stance on marijuana eradication? And make sure that if you have questions, you ask them, you get them answered. Right now, our Congressman, Mike Thompson, is doing a good job of listening to us. His son's a deputy sheriff in Napa, and so he has the sheriff's ear, and we're making some progress. So keep doing that. It's your responsibility. One of the other reasons I'm here is because the precious resources, the natural resources in the Mendocino National Forest have been shut down. We used in Covelo, if you've ever been to Covelo, I hope you have, we used to have wonderful mills operating, we had people employed. and there's no mills now. The only real jobs in Coblow, other than a couple grocery stores, are government jobs. Teachers, road department, and our government was not built to hire more government employees, I assure you. My father always said the best day an American could have is a day that Congress is not in session. So I'm going to close with a couple important rules for me. And I would encourage you, and I'm going to stick around, challenge us on this, and challenge me and say either you don't agree, and if you don't agree, why you don't agree. But the 10th Amendment, the States' Rights Amendment, is a critical issue for you to be aware of. The states' rights issue is, if you look at why the Civil War was fought, it wasn't fought over slavery. It was fought over states' rights.
That's right.
And the states' rights that we have crumbling and being taken away from us right now is another major reason that we are up here. We're a state, we're organized, we have our own government, and there's a clear separation between what the federal government can and should be doing as compared to what they are doing. There's a difference. And if you're not aware of this, you're in the wrong spot. Because I would imagine if you're here, sitting here, you know this is happening. You know that our states' rights issues are on the forefront of some of the major battles that we're fighting with the federal government right now. Another major issue that we all have up here is the Second Amendment. And I'm not saying that lightly. You know, you might chuckle about having concealed weapons throughout northern part of the state. I'm telling you, the southern part of the state, they don't have the luxury of having sheriffs who understand that the Second Amendment allows concealed weapons to be issued to responsible citizens. And what we are doing is we're empowering responsible citizens to take over their own personal safety. Because the truth is, if you see our patrol cars that say to serve and protect, I'm going to have a tough time protecting you when my closest deputy is 2 hours away. And so the Second Amendment is alive and well in Northern California, and that's another issue. The glass is half full. Appreciate what we have there, because there's many people, and you might have friends in Southern California, who think we're just a bunch of gun-crazy idiots. Well, we're not. I don't have problems with my concealed weapons holders. I have problems with people who don't want to get a concealed weapon permit, but they go ahead and carry. And they're the ones who are causing problems. I'm going to close with a simple phrase from a country song. And I know that I'm following speakers who have quoted our forefathers, who've quoted the Bible and quoted things that are very, very important to us. But a country western song is written by Aaron Tippett. And it's very clear, and everybody in this room has heard it, and you've sung along with it. You've got to stand for something, or you'll fall for anything. That's where we are right now, folks. Thank you.
Okay, now we come to the last part of this thing, in which we have some questions and answers. You know, going through the questions, one of the things that's come up is several people were confused or unsure about what coordination was. And again, it is a requirement by the federal government that is put into place, and each of the last several presidents have signed a document, an executive order, declaring that it is expected that every agency coordinate with any local government that may be affected by a plan that they put into place. Even before they are in the drafting of that plan, they must coordinate with local governments. Now, those local governments, because any elected body is a governmental body. Thereby, your harbor districts, your school districts, your many water districts that exist, some of your fire districts, your elected sheriff, board of supervisors, city councils, all of those are governmental entities. Now, coordination is a strictly government-to-government activity. Okay? So then they say, well, we're going to have a public meeting, we all get together and you can tell us what you want. No, that's not coordination. Coordination is government to government. And the persons that engage in coordination must be at a level where they can make the decisions about whatever it is you're discussing and coordinating about. In other words, they can coordinate with the sheriff. They can't coordinate with the sergeant in my department because the sergeant doesn't have the ability to make a decision at that level.
Make him your agent, then he does.
If you make him my agent, yeah, that ain't gonna happen. But within an organization, so when you sit down with a federal agency, you must be sitting across from someone who has the capacity to make a decision and make that decision final. So that's what coordination is in a nutshell. And the requirement is that state agencies and federal agencies all have this requirement. And this requirement mandates them to do this. This is not an elective thing. This is not they may. No, they shall. And this was put in by representatives that knew what they were doing. They knew that unchecked federal governments would do, and bureaucracies would do all sorts of things, not considering local government. And so they knew that this coordination would be a powerful tool if used, and it is. And we're beginning to use it to hopefully some positive effects. Now, that was one of the questions. One of the other questions was, why did we support West Chesborough? Because they think he's a snake. He said, there's a snake here, and West Chesborough was trampling on our liberty. Why did some of the rural sheriffs support him? We supported him because he has fought for public safety. Now, I don't agree with everything West Chesborough does. I don't agree with many of his politics. I don't agree with many of his environmental takes. But he has always fought for rural sheriffs' public safety and rural sheriffs' money. There is a chunk of money that comes to rural sheriffs. We were drastically at risk of losing that money about 3 years ago, and if it was only because that he came to bat and was able to actually move the Democratic caucus off of that issue, and by bringing it forward to allow the rural sheriff's money, which is $500,000 that comes to every single rural county, to help improve our law enforcement, and that money was put back in largely because of his efforts. And that's why from time to time you'll see another sheriff standing up next to Wesley because he does support public safety. Now, I don't agree with a lot of his politics, but public safety he's very strong on. That's that answer. Now, I have a question for Mike Downey over at Humboldt County there. Says, does a county need a coordination ordinance to have those rights? And does Humboldt County have one?
That's a good question. I don't believe we do. I don't believe we do, but after listening to much of what I heard today, I'm going to make sure, whether we do or not, begin to work on something like that. I think it's very important. It's been demonstrated here today, the importance of that.
Do all U.S. Forest Service members have the right to be armed? If not, how do you know which ones have that right? I have been told that it must be a law enforcement noted on their vehicles. Is this true or false? Johnny?
Pass, no. Actually, U.S. Forest Service law enforcement officers working in, I know in my county, all have law enforcement marked vehicles. They have badges, they have credentials, and if they're law enforcement officers, they have to have gone through the federal academy. They have to have been certified as peace officers. They have to meet, the police officer standards and training requirements equivalent to California standards, and only then will they be considered for, well, let's just say authorization in each respective county like mine to not only enforce federal laws on U.S. Forest Service lands, but also some state laws and local like Penal Code, California Vehicle Code, and adjacent areas or adjacent roads or lands. So they have to be certified, they have to have gone through the training, they have to have been, and they also have to receive that authorization from each sheriff, like me. And we do that in writing. And also, the important thing about this, and one of the reasons that the California State Sheriff's Association agreed that we did not want the expansion of federal law enforcement powers for the U.S. Forest Service law enforcement officers, we felt that authority to enforce state laws should be extended only by each respective sheriff, because we felt that if they were allowed to usurp the authority of the sheriff, then they would also be usurping the Constitution and our state constitution and the duly elected authority of our sheriffs, because we want to have the latitude that if a LEO, if a law enforcement officer acts up and does something inappropriate, that we could deal with the law enforcement officer's supervisor and either mitigate the problem or pull that individual's law enforcement authority to operate in our county. And I hope that answers your question.
This one's open to anybody, to any and all sheriffs. At what point do you tell the state and federal agencies that I will not comply? And will you support us for the consequences and or where we can get help for actors for actions taken against us? Anybody want to feel that one?
Well, I don't mind. Clearly, let me say this one more time. We are not against the federal government. We are not. There are many government agencies, federal government agencies, that do assist us in accomplishing our mission. Do I encourage anyone to stand up to the federal government? I encourage you to exercise your rights, absolutely, because that's what we do as Americans. At least if you have the intestinal fortitude, you can exercise your rights, and you clearly know what rights you have. Do if one of my citizens stood up to the federal government and got taken into custody, I would, if he was within my county and I found out he was in the federal clinker, I would certainly investigate it myself to make sure that the federal government had the authority to do what they did, but I'm not going to be their attorney and go in and represent them. What I'm going to do is to make sure that, and I'll give you a good example of this in just a minute, what I want to do is make sure the federal government doesn't overextend their boundaries. I had a situation 3 years ago in Covelo. We did a very large coordinated marijuana effort, and in one day I think we did 22 search warrants. It was a very productive day, and about a week later we had a citizen calling me to say that, well, an attorney calling me to say that one of his clients had a search warrant served at their house, and they weren't home when it was served, but when they returned home, their entire garden had been cut up. And I'm not talking marijuana garden, I'm talking about their squash and their tomato and their corn had been literally cut down with a machete. And so I was very upset over this, and at first I didn't believe it. I said, it didn't happen, it's not true. And he says, well, I figured you'd say that, and I'll be right down with the photographs. And he came down with the photographs. And I found out that none of my deputies had been at that location. It was a federal search warrant, and the federal agencies had done it. And I certainly made sure that the superiors at the federal level were aware of what was happening, so they could take care of that. But here's one of the reasons that I'm so cautious of just saying, no, federal government, I don't want anything to do with you. The federal government does have the right to come in our counties and enforce the law, their law. They really do. So it behooves us as sheriffs to make sure we have a decent relationship with them, so we can say, listen, when you guys come here into our county to serve a search warrant, the only thing I ask is you give us a call and give me the benefit of having one of my deputy sheriffs go with you to that search warrant. So if there are questions afterwards, I can call my employee in to say, will you please tell me exactly what happened? So if we absolutely sever the cord and say, no, federal government, we don't want anything to do with you, I think that we would be cutting off our nose to spite our face instead of trying to figure out a better way to respond to some of these issues. I don't want anybody to come in my county, abuse my citizens, not tell us who they are, and drive away in their chariot of justice and get out of there and the next day my phone's ringing and I have no clue this is what's happened. So in answer to your question, if you want to stand up to a state authority, make sure you're in the legal right. If you want to stand up to a federal authority, make sure you're in your right. But if you push it really truly, you need to have a good attorney. But what I told you before, the sheriff has two major responsibilities: enforce the law and protect the rights of our citizens. And that does mean that making sure that your civil rights, your federal civil rights, are not violated, because that's very, very important to us also. So I hope that answers your question.
I just want to mention briefly that Tom is absolutely right. In 1 week in Siskiyou County, we had a double homicide, we had 2 search and rescues, and we had a dead body in the river. For these incidents, I got help from the California Highway Patrol. I got help from CAL FIRE law enforcement. I got help from U.S. Forest Service law enforcement. I got help from California Department of Fish and Game. Oftentimes, we also had help from the U.S. Forest Service climbing rangers on Mount Shasta. Some of these federal and state agencies do assist us, and sometimes they lay their lives on the line to help us and the citizens. So you got to keep that in mind. On the other hand, when I brought up the example of the NOAA Office of Law Enforcement, what we're looking for is, what Tom says is, we got to work with these agencies because we're too small to operate independently by ourselves. But what we have to do is keep these agencies in check. And when there are abuses, when your rights are violated, that's when we need to stand up and now, wait a minute. Because there's reasonableness, there's proportionality, there's the constitutional rights that you have as citizens. And that's why we're standing up. And we're asking the right questions. And a lot of this has to do with coordination. Now, wait a minute. Hold up. Why are you doing this, and what is your authority for doing it? And there's nothing wrong with asking the questions. And quite frankly, it's not the rank and file wardens or special agents or LEOs that are causing the problems. It's managers at some regional or national or state level that are making dumb decisions. Those are the ones we have to deal with most of the time. Thank you.
And I want to add one thing. You talk about drawing the line. I talked about the timber management or timber harvest plan that I read some time ago. The reason I read that was the citizen brought it to me, actually a forester brought it to me, because the citizen who was concerned about the plan, because it said, among other things, shall subject your property, blah, 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 to inspection by state, local, federal agencies, right? The federal thing scared the citizen, and this is on private property where this harvest was going to occur. Well, that federal word scared the citizens, so I'm not a lawyer, but I did the research, and I talked to some lawyer friends, and what it boils down to is the federal government had no jurisdiction on that land anyway. So my suggestion was, strike those words, strike federal. And I haven't heard back from them. I assume that it went through. But you talk about, that's somewhere where you just have to draw the line. It's probably a document that was boilerplated, but why was it in there? There's no jurisdiction unless we give consent. Without probable cause, we don't have any reason to go on property. Okay?
Says the Sheriff's Association has gone on record as opposing AB 2179, the law that will allow the Department of Fish and Game to bypass local DAs and law enforcement. Please discuss. Any gentlemen? John.
No, the reason, well, I'll turn this over. I'll make this brief. AB 2179 was a very, I think, an insidious law. Proposed, and really it basically gives Fish and Game the authority to impose civil or administrative sanctions or fines against violators that, and it deals with like that incidental take permit I was talking about earlier by Fish and Game, where a farmer, some fingerling coho salmon died in a stream on his land. Well, it involves smuggling, endangered species, but it also it involves takes. So theoretically, a rancher could have a few fish die in a creek, and the Fish and Game come along and say, well, that's a $20,000 fine for each fish. So if you have 10 fish, you know, that's a couple $100,000, right? Well, not only is it a civil or administrative penalty, but the appeal process is not through local courts, because they've taken it out of the criminal realm and put it in the civil or administrative realm, and the appeal process goes to the Director of California Department of Fish and Game. When the California State Sheriff's Association heard about this, we looked at this, and our Land Use Policy Committee looked at it, and we recommended to the CSSA that we oppose this, and they jumped on board right away. And with a consortium of about 30 other organizations, are vehemently opposing this proposal, because we feel it not only usurps the authority of local law enforcement, but also it bypasses, this process bypasses our local district attorneys and also our courts, our local courts, and puts these type of resource management type violations in this civil administrative process, which really doesn't have much accountability. It's kind of like the fox guard the hen house type of thing. So right now there have been some amendments to the bill. It got through the committee. It got through the Senate, the last I heard, but with amendments, and we're waiting to see what will happen. But this is one of those, and this is why you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to these laws that are proposed, because it's kind of like the Second Amendment. I liken it to the Second Amendment. There are a lot of dumb laws being proposed every year in California, and I think this is one of them that has the potential to be abused. And why would the California Department of Fish and Game want this particular law? Well, because they don't want to go and handle these fish takes or these other violations in the local courts, because they have to deal with the local DAs and they have to deal with the local courts. And the local district attorneys in the courts have a tendency to understand local issues, and they also understand things like probable cause. They understand elements of criminal violations. And if these things are kind of bogus or they're inappropriate, then I know our district attorney typically will not file charges. And the courts look at these violations a lot of times dubiously and say, hey, if it's not reasonable or it's not a actual verifiable law violation, we're not going to go for it. Well, this takes it out of their hands and puts it into this bureaucratic realm of, hey, the Fish and Game's going to decide. And that's why we didn't like it. Does anybody else have any?
Jury and execution.
Just real quick, from my standpoint, in a nutshell, by calling this a civil issue, I mean, they're usurping the 5th, possibly the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th Amendments, and I don't see how they could possibly get away with it. It's just, to me, it's just absolutely due process, meet your accuser, excessive fines. I mean, it's just, because it's civil? Give me a break.
Yeah, those are fines up to $20,000, by the way. We had one question that kind of got duplicated a couple of places, but it's like, look around, they said, The question was, look around and see all the older people here. Look around, they said, where are the young ones? Where are the young kids? There's a few, yay! Where are the young people? How do we excite them? How do we get them involved? How do we get them to wake up? Well, of course, part of the problem is when you talk about rural America, is the average age of a farmer in the United States is 60 years old. That's the average age of a farmer, is 60 years old. When they were talking about the economic collapse, and they say when Germany collapsed, when Japan collapsed, the only people that ever came out through that thing making a ton of money and economically viable were the farmers and the ranchers. The people that made their families, their fortune, their job with the earth. those are the ones that came through just fine, because the things that they grew were the things that people paid whatever they wanted, because they needed to feed their families, they needed to feed their cities, their towns. And the farmers and the ranchers were those that, during those kinds of devastations, make the income that survive during those times of unrest. Rural America in those times will come out fine. But again, those are difficult issues. How do we appeal to young people? You know, when you look out at, there is nothing very different from our stance, you know, defending the Constitution, asking for federally limited governments and fiscal responsibility. It's the same message that Ron Paul propagates around so well. And yet he has a following of young people from colleges to colleges across this country. There's no difference in the message. The only problem is that many of the people propagating that message, the Tea Party and others, have been demonized, have been trying to be relegated into, you know, that you're just a tool of the Republican Party. Absolutely guarantee you that ain't happening. We'll try to take them over, but we're definitely not there too. But it's a message that resonates with young people. Individual freedom. It resonates with young people. Being held accountable for yourself. Yes, it does. It resonates very well with the young. They want to be left alone. They want to have self-reliance. They want to have the freedom and liberties that we so cherish. That message, if you ever look at those Ron Paul meetings, those people are energized. The strong libertarian view that runs through young people these days, they believe in it. The internet, heck, it gives them a voice. You know, that's where we can attack ourselves to the young people. If you want to encourage those young people, it's that libertarian view that they hold so dear that is not in any way contradictory to those principles that we hold behind the Constitution and individual liberty, federally limited governments, and fiscal responsibility in our states, our local governments, and our federal government. But that's how we can appeal to the young people. Get out there and motivate them and understand that there's very little difference in our messages, and educate them on what it is to actually believe in the Constitution and know what it says. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank those that are sitting at this table for coming all this way up to Delaware County and visiting us. And I want to thank you, because without your support, without you being there, without having you understand what the issues are, and without you being behind and beside each of our sheriffs here, this is not at all possible for us. We only can do this because you support us in these efforts. Thank you so much for coming and being here today.